is okay. Great. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache?
Here.
Councilman Seaton?
Here.
Councilman Voigt?
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Here.
Mayor Knudsen?
Here. Please rise to the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please join us for a moment of silence for our men and women serving our nation and our first responders. Thank you. So we're going to start with public comments, not to exceed 5 minutes. Anyone?
Tony Damiano, 274 South Broad Street. First off, I'd like to thank Jeff and Bernadette for meeting with me. I thought they were very positive meetings. It was great to hear both of your point of views. Susan, I'd like to thank you for settling the PSE&G debacle. I hope you all understand the severity of a project like this impacting the CBD during fourth quarter. The first thing that I do when a village manager is in place, I did it with Roberta, I did it with Ken Gabbard, is to set up a meeting with them to explain what the Ridgewood Guild is all about and to fill them in a little bit about what the CBD is about and how it works. And with both managers, I have requested no disruption on a Friday and Saturday throughout the whole year, if possible, unless it's an emergency, and definitely no disruption during fourth quarter. It could really make or break a business. Many businesses do 30 to 50% of their business. The disappointment was, and I haven't spoken about Roberta since she left, I can tell you this, our track record for village management has not been the best. And in my eyes, I thought Roberta was trying to make it work. And the idea that she got blamed for this was a big mistake. I don't attend every council meeting, nor do I wish to, nor do you want me here at every meeting. But I did miss the 2 August meetings, and from what I understand, it was on public record that she mentioned the PSE&G project twice. I believe it was the August 2nd meeting and August 13th. So to find out that evening, I think it was 2 weeks ago here, I honestly hadn't planned to attend that meeting. I was quite shocked, and I reacted the best way I knew how. I contacted PSE&G, made 5 phone calls. They finally did get back to me at 8:30 a.m. the next day. I got the letter out to the business owners, etc. That shovel would have gone in the ground, and it would have been just disastrous. I lived through a 2-year train station renovation where 1 lane was open, and it was a nightmare. Killed the CBD for holiday season. So I'm glad it has been postponed and pushed into January, where it belongs, because it was not an emergency. And to my point, if we say it's going to end in November, we know it had to go into December. The East Glen project began on May 2nd. It was supposed to be completed on September 2nd before the kids went back to school. It's still going on. I had a resident come in today saying, you know, they're stopping at 2:30, but it goes on all day long. So now that they're stopping early, it just continues on. So enough about PSE&G. I want to address Ann Loving's comment from the last meeting about the employee parking at Cottage Place. She said there's parking there. You can find spaces. Susan, you agree. I will give you my best guess why that is not working. Our employees, most employees, make minimum wage or a little bit over that. Those meters are 75 cents an hour. So why pay 75 cents an hour if you're working a 20 or 30 or 40-hour work week? That adds up when you can pay 50 cents and park on the street where you're not supposed to be parking. On your website, it says nothing about the cottage lot being employee parking. It just says parking at Cottage Place. So I think that needs to be corrected. But again, it makes sense. Who would pay 75 cents an hour? I have customers coming into my store who don't feed the meter, and I tell them, you're risking getting ticketed. You have to pay the meters. So that, in a nutshell, is really why I truly believe it's not being used to its fullest capacity. Again, 75 cents an hour times 20, 30, 40-hour work week doesn't make sense to me. The other thing is this regarding the business district. You really have to learn the dynamics behind it because it is so volatile. It really is. And it's not just parking. It's for the retailers, it's online shopping. It's the big box stores. For the restaurants, it's the simple competition. We are over-assorted in the restaurant category. We all know that. And it really is the jurisdiction of the landlord who they want to rent to. So I don't know how you fix that. But, if that could be concentrated on. We ended our bank era with 22 banks, and now it's the restaurant era. But you should be using the Ridgewood Guild and the Chamber of Commerce, for that matter, as a conduit to the business community. That's what we're here for. So again, I thank you for working on this as I did. I'm glad we were able to nip it in a short amount of time and move forward. I'm glad to see parking is on the agenda, but do consider that about Cottage Place. It's just not, it just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Bagdon, 23 Palmender Walk. On September 15th, some of my neighbors and I attended the safety meeting at which the no parking ordinance on Palmender Walk was questioned by the residents of Sherman Place. Sherman Place clearly has a safety problem related to parking on the sharp curves. However, their issues are totally different and separate from ours. Some of the Sherman Place residents attribute the new no parking on Palmander to an increase in parking on their street. Since that meeting, I have been keeping an informal log of the cars parked on Sherman as I come and go on my street. During the week, when I leave for work at 9:30, there have been no cars parked on Sherman, and when I return home between 3 and 4, there are maybe one or two, and sometimes none then. In comparison, during these time frames, Palmander Walk had numerous cars parked all day on both sides of the street, which caused our safety problems. The residents of Palmander Walk went through all the proper channels over the last 3 years. We appeared before the council, who sent us to the safety committee. The safety committee recommended a study by their committee and engineering, and 2 council members did several site visits. Our concerns were validated, and the new ordinance was proposed, approved, and adopted. Yes, the Sherman Place safety issues should be pursued by those residents, but not at the expense of the improved safety we now have on Palmander Walk. The residents on Palmander were willing to give up our own parking privileges to solve the safety issues we've encountered over the last several years. And Sherman Place residents can certainly do the same for their own street. This was discussed in detail at the safety meeting, with positive recommendations now being evaluated by the engineering and police departments. And we do support our Sherman Place neighbors in their efforts to make their street safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Robert Halliday, 374 Evergreen Place. And I want to talk about transparency. I think transparency, which goes with honesty, is the most important driver as far as the good working of a government. And I'd like to give 3 examples where things have not been transparent, where I suggest that we see more transparency. One, which is what I had discussed the meeting before about the $25,000 won by Ms. Knudsen. And again, I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with it, but I think it would be great if Ms. Knudsen had announced that, because the timing was kind of peculiar. Another need for transparency, I understand that 2 of your sons have or will be joining the police force. Now, I understand they're fine boys, and I think they're a credit to you and your husband, and I think they would be a credit to the village police force. It would be nice if that is disclosed openly. I mean, if de Blasio's 2 sons had joined the New York Police Department, then I'm sure the New York Times would have had a front page cover. Now, I know when Mayor Killian's son joined the police force, I went and congratulated both, because the son was following in his father's footsteps, a good boy, and I think it's just great. But by disclosing it, you absolutely diffuse any opportunity for anyone to ask questions, why have you not? A third example for the mayor is Shedler. Again, her father lives across the street from the house, and I'm sure her decisions are motivated by the good of the community, but it'll be good for her to disclose the fact her father does live across the street from the house. And I remember a vote under the old regime when there was a vote in Shedler. Ms. Knudsen conveniently showed up after the vote was over, which I thought was kind of, puzzling, if you will. So I urge you to be very, very open with these things. Now, also, along with that is things like the planning board. I call it a purge, and it is a purge. I would like to understand what it is you're trying to do with the planning board. Gail Price was eased out. Many other people were eased out. One of the people that I know has joined, I was wondering what qualifications she had to be on the planning board, and I can't think of any other, just being a supporter, if you will. So it'd be great if the mayor were to come and talk in front of the public and say what it is you're trying to do with the planning board. I mean, I can understand you're trying to move Ridgewood backwards, which is fine. You're in power, so you can do that. My biggest concern are rumors I've been hearing about a person, and I won't mention the name because it's a rumor I've just picked up, that at least 3 of you are considering appointing or pushing to replace Roberta. Now, I won't mention the name because it's a rumor, but I did check that person's name on Google, and my screen basically glowed. It absolutely glowed, if you know what I mean. Some really heavy-duty stuff. Now, Mr. Hache, you're in the financial area, you know what due diligence is. You'd better, as your fiduciary to the public, do some damn good due diligence as to who it is you're talking to and who it is you're looking to appoint. The future of the village depends on that. And you know what I'm talking about. And especially if that person had anything to do with your campaign or had contributed to your campaign, you should recuse yourself. So my question, the thing I have for you, now you're so critical of the 3 amigos, and I would say the 5 of you are far, far less open than the 3 amigos were. I mean, they had one hearing after another. They had one public hearing after another. I don't see that. It's almost like Ms. Knudsen has her agenda, and she's driving it. She's got the support of the people around her, and we hear nothing about it. I urge you, and as I said, Ms. Knudsen, I want you to succeed, because if you succeed, Ridgewood succeeds. But at the rate we're going, you're going to be driving Ridgewood off a cliff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I just want to make one comment about the remark that the council's agenda is to move Ridgewood backwards. Well, that was coming from someone who says repeatedly that Ridgewood is dying, dying, dying. So I would guess from that gentleman's perspective, moving backwards is a good thing, because then we're going to be getting healthier. Consider the source.
Jacqueline Hone, 30 Carriage Lane. I'm coming here today regarding an issue that's been going on for years, at least dating back to 2011 that I can remember, which is the old Ridgewood Nursery on Route 17 North. Councilwoman Walsh, you've helped us, the residents of the Commons of Ridgewood, in the past with that. We seem to have been moving in the right direction as far as getting some relief. There was a lot of non-conforming use. There was commercial operation running out of clearly an expansion of that use. There was also violations of setback requirements. There was removal of over 250 trees. It was starting to move in the right direction. They were actually brought up on a bunch of violations and given summonses, and it was being cleaned up. It was a huge health issue because there was garbage back there that was piled over 8 feet high and went on the entire length of the lot. There's also wood thrown everywhere. It looks more like a junkyard than it actually does a nursery. And then all of a sudden, there was no enforcement of that property whatsoever. So for the last 2 years, there was a complete drop of what was being done to enforce it and put it back to the way it was. They've erected 3 buildings. Their permit says their plan was only to have 1. So there are no permits for that. There are no permits for the fence. They have people working there 24 hours a day. There's nowhere for them to use the bathroom. The fire department had come out and they had seen electrical hookup. No permits for that because it was an old nursery that basically just operated during hours of sunrise. So I'm here to plead that somebody go back and take a look at that and go back, because it's been noted that we have increased rodent problems in that area. I live directly behind the area. We've had a lot of it. There's overgrown, the garbage is so much that there's actual vegetation that's starting to grow out of the garbage. So there's an array of different insects and bugs. I just think it's a health hazard, and we're almost worse than we were 3 years ago when we started to pick off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Helen, we'll look into that, definitely, with our property enforcement, with our building department, with the fire department, with our health department. Okay? All of those issues.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Pamela Perrin. I live at 123 Kenilworth Road in Ridgewood, and I'd like to urge the council to please consider cleaning up the North Walnut site, the property at Town Garage and the surrounding areas. And I'm not quite sure how it could be funded, but since the area was cited by the DEP for the spillage of diesel fuel and hydraulic fuel several years ago, I'd ask that you look into cleaning it up and making use of that site, which is now fallow.
Thank you, Pam.
Good evening. I'm Chris Reed, 112 Stanley Place. I'm part of the Sherman Stanley Place safety project, I guess you would call it. We're trying to make the blind turn on Sherman safer, and we do believe that we might have been impacted by the no parking that has been implemented on Pomander. Just a very quick backstory. Once the Sherman and Stanley residents realized that Pomander was going to have no parking, we attended meetings to try to get that vote to be postponed so a study could be done how it might impact Sherman and the very dangerous curve that's on that street. That didn't happen, so there's no parking on Pomander, and right now we definitely are impacted by that no parking. Just on Saturday, I know you're probably aware that 2 pedestrians were hit at Sherman and Godwin and Pomander. So there's obviously safety concerns in that area, and I just wanted to say thank you for looking into it further and continuing with the progress, and not necessarily just pushing off the parking problem onto Sherman. Thank you.
Sir,
Thank
what
you.
was your name and address again, please? Sir?
Oh, I said Chris Reed, 112 Stanley Place.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Jane Shinozuka, 825 Norgate. I am just wondering if somebody could shed light. I know that the duck pond is a county property, but what the heck happened over there? It's like, it's a mess now, and I wonder, is it something that has to go through the town? Is the town the conduit to the county, or do people from town get in touch with people at the county and say what's going on in Ridgewood? Because it's so dramatically, it's just in such a state of disrepair, Is there some kind of specific issue happening, or they just don't have money to fund?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I just actually, a resident.
You can add to it.
I'm sorry.
No, I looked into this through
Okay.
Parks and
Go
Rec.
ahead. Oh, sure, great.
So this is part of the discussion in Parks and Rec. It is a county property, even though it's on Ridgewood.
Yeah.
The problem is that the level of the Saddle River has dipped below where the pumps are. So the pumps are not effective in getting the water up. And then they've also had some issues with the linings, the clay, which is a problem that they had back in 97, 98. The director of parks and at the county level and the county executive are actually, they're aware of it, and they're trying to find ways to remediate. But it looks terrible and it smells terrible. My concern was in the summer was with Zika because of the stagnant water and so on, not having.
So somebody is aware of it, and they're at least.
Yeah, no,
it's
they're
on
looking
the book
into it.
somewhere.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, Jane. How are you? Good evening.
How are you? I'm Jane Remus, 118 Madison Place. And I just wanted to make a couple of short points about the Pomander Walk situation. One is that at the last citizen safety meeting, I remember Charlie saying our committee did not support the new parking restrictions. And I think there's probably confusion about what it means when the citizen safety supports or doesn't support something. And I remember it a few years ago with the Clinton sidewalks, it was sort of the same thing. It was clear sitting at those meetings that while they didn't really like the idea or support the idea, they chose not to really, veto the whole thing because yes, it was maybe, the strong preference of the residents to have these new parking restrictions. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I think, Bernadette, you were at the last meeting, and Michael, you were at the ones in the spring where, the people were asking, are you sure this could be a problem? And so anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that Charlie DeMarco said we did not support them. It doesn't mean he was going to veto it or oppose it, but just that he wasn't strongly in favor of it. And I also feel like the Pomander Walk issues are, there are some minor issues, but compared with Sherman Place, that's maybe their burden for that little area, because at Sherman Place you have, number one, you have cars circling that block, because if you can't find a spot in front of the wine cellar or Carlos, you circle, circle, circle. You've also got people coming onto the train station, turning left onto Washington Place to go to GW, or just avoid the traffic light at the Women's Club. And that one intersection of Sherman and Washington, gets a lot more traffic than, you'd really think. And then what I've noticed this year is that there are throngs of GW students every day walking up Washington Place to West Side Bagels and we're into town. I've never seen it like that before, but I mean, I would say it's over 100. Certainly on Fridays it's even worse, or maybe kids go meet their parents up by West Side Bagels or something. But, so now there are more cars parked on Sherman Place. You're sending more traffic into that intersection with all the GW students walking there. So I think it would be a fair compromise to sort of share the burden among all the streets in the area. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. Okay. And with that, without any other public comments, I do want to just respond to a couple of items. First, I want to respond to Tony Damiano. We really appreciate everybody working together, PSE&G, Dave Hollenbeck, all of the PSE&G representatives, Janet Fricke and Chris Rudishauser for participating in the meeting and really getting this done. And I will say what was most responded to was the suggestion that our small businesses within our central business district have many obstacles before them, be it online shopping, free parking at the malls, mall shopping, all of the big box stores, and to put one more obstacle in front of them during the most critical time of the year for our small business owners was unseemly, and something that they did respond to that we would each together shoulder the burden and give this opportunity to our business owners to shine during the holiday season and during this fourth quarter. So, and we're grateful to everyone in the business community that was supportive of those efforts as well. I do need to respond to Mr. Hallaby. First, regarding my parents' home on West Saddle River Road. That issue has been put to rest well over a year and a half ago. As far as my sons, 2 of them currently at the Bergen County Police Academy and having been hired by the Village of Ridgewood, I nor any of my council colleagues are the hiring authority for the Village of Ridgewood. That falls on the shoulder of the village manager. Nor am I responsible for announcements of job hirings. I'm not responsible for the announcements of anyone that's hired on any department or with any staff member within the Village of Ridgewood. That falls squarely on the shoulders of the village manager, the hiring authority, the same person who hired them in July. And now the last item. Remarkable that anyone twice would come to the microphone and suggest that 600 members of the Catholic Church or purchasers of tickets on a 50-50 raffle would somehow collude to allow my ticket to be pulled for $25,000 as somehow suggesting the timing was a payoff for saying the garage was too big is outrageous. For the record, I purchased a ticket outside of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, but they did not run the raffle. It was a benefit ticket for the Academy of Our Lady in Glen Rock to support educational materials and scholarships, which are near and dear to my heart, as most everyone knows. I do fully support the Jamboree Scholarship Program, and this was an opportunity to assist students who could not necessarily afford to advance their education in a Catholic high school due to the very expensive tuition these days, and it was an opportunity for me to give back to that community, which I did. And just for the record, it wasn't quite a 50-50. The state of New Jersey made out quite well. Although they didn't pay for 30% of the ticket, they did get 30% of the winning. But in any event, so hopefully we'll put all of this to rest, Mr. Hallaby, and in the future we'll think about, no thank you, that's fine. We'll think about the kind of allegations that we make at the microphone when it comes to people that do good things. And actually, I'm sorry I didn't respond to this a couple of weeks ago when you first suggested it. It was as offensive then as it is this evening. Okay. With that, we'll go on to discussion items. We're going to start with policy, endorse community development block grant, family prom. Oh.
I'm sorry. We have several. There are actually, one is for Family Promise of Bergen County, and is to provide shelter and support to homeless working families. And then we have 3 for Share Inc. One is to replace an aging central air conditioning unit. One is to replace 2 aging heating boilers, and the last to install a whole house generator. And those are all for 104 Cottage Place. We're putting these at the beginning of the meeting because they are going to be on the special public meeting this evening. Were there any questions?
Okay.
And the next one is award a contract for the pickup, removal, and hauling of leaves. We did go out for bids twice. No bids were received during the first bid opening. The second bid opening, we did receive 1 bid. It requires, this is the pickup, hauling, and removal of the leaves to our compost facility in Area B, which is on the west side. basically from Hillcrest to Franklin and North Maple to the western border of Ridgewood. Again, one bid was received. The firm of DTS Services was the sole bidder, and the recommendation is to award this. Again, we are doing this for timely purposes because the leaves are already starting to fall. Slowly, but they are starting to fall. So with your agreement, we will put that on the special public meeting this evening as well.
Great. Any questions? No? Very good. So with that, we are going to have a motion to suspend work session to convene a special public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes. So we'll call this meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilman Hache,
Here.
Councilman Seaton,
Here.
Councilman Voigt,
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Here.
Mayor Knudsen.
Here. So we have resolutions.
The following resolutions, numbered 16-287 through 16-292, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. There's a brief description beside each resolution to be considered on the consent agenda. Each resolution will be read by title only. 16-287, confirm endorsement of Community Development Block Grant, Family Promise of Bergen County Family Sheltering Programs. 16-288, confirm endorsement of Community Development Block Grant, Share Incorporated. 104 Cottage Place, replacement of hot water heating boiler. 16-289, confirm endorsement of Community Development Block Grant, Share Incorporated, 104 Cottage Place, replacement of central air conditioning system. 16-290, Title 59 approval, pickup, removal, and hauling of leaves. 16-291, award contract, pickup, removal, and hauling of leaves, not to exceed $85,000. 16-292, confirm endorsement of Community Development Block Grant, Share Incorporated, 104 Cottage Place, house generator.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Hache,
Yes.
Seaton,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes. And a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nope. And with that, we're back. Okay, great.
So our first items of discussion are for Ridgewood Water, so I'm going to have Rich Calby come up. And actually, I'm going to have him speak about chromium-6, which there was an article, I know, in an online publication, and so he's going to address that first, and then we'll go into his items.
Thank you. Good evening. So I want to take the opportunity just to do a brief summary, and then open it up for any questions you have on this issue. It was about a week ago today that an article was released regarding some research that was done by an environmental group and some new limits that they were trying to propose in California, where this contaminant hexavalent chromium got its origin and its name and popularity from mostly from the movie Erin Brockovich, where it was found in the drinking water contaminated by a local utility in California. Since that report was released, we immediately put information up on the Ridgewood Water and the Village website. The information we provided was a one-page statement on the article, responding that we do agree, that there's concern here. It's something that we need to look, forward on and decide what action we need to take. But like with any other contaminant, not knowing what we're going to be regulated to, it's very hard for us to say what we can do and how we're going to treat it. In this particular case, the limit that they are putting out there, and again, this isn't approved by any authority, EPA or DEP at this point. If it was approved at that limit, Ridgewood Water and every utility in the nation would have to install filtration at a cost of billions of dollars. So I believe that's part of the reason why it's taken so long for this to be evaluated. A little bit about where we are relative to this. We've been measuring total chromium in our water for some time now. It's a regulated contaminant. The DEP looks, and EPA looks at total chromium because they want to contain the total of all three parts of chromium. There's chromium, chromium-3, and chromium-6, which is the hexavalent chromium that was in the article. They look at all three together because these elements have a habit of changing. They change in context between 3, 6, back to chromium, the volatile like that. So at the point when DEP established this limit, they decided it was better to look at the total rather than the parts. We put information on the website that describes each part, what chromium-3 is, what chromium-6 is. They're all natural elements. They've been in our water since our wells have been pumping, in some cases over 100 years, because they come from the rock in the ground. And in most cases, based on the results we have, outside of one well, the levels indicate that they all are naturally occurring. There's one outlier that has a higher level that we're going to look closer at that could be caused by some outside source because although they're natural elements, they are utilized in manufacturing, and we want to trace and see if there was any type of facility in that area that may have created some type of contamination that's causing that higher level. The good news is that those levels, although the one is spiked up, are significantly lower than California's current standard of 10 parts per billion. Our highest reading was 2.9 at the one well. All the other wells were in the range of 0.2 to 0.6, which is the naturally occurring level. So at this point, we're going to focus in on that one outlier. But again, without any real regulation, and there's not even a health advisory in the state or EPA at this moment that we could go by. There's no telling what type of treatment we'd have to install to what level. But we do want to find out if this one outlier is naturally occurring or if it's from other source. We could trace that and try to get some money to help pay for that. The World Health Organization actually did a study on this some time ago. They have a lower limit of total chromium of 50 parts per billion. We're currently regulated at 100. And again, our total chromium limits, when you look at all the parts together, our highest reading in 2014 was 18.3 compared to the level of the health organization at 50 and the state level of 100. So we've never been in violation. We're way below the standard. But moving forward, we're gonna look at this further. We've been talking about hosting another public forum. I'm hesitant to do that right away. I'd like to combine it with a bunch of other issues. Continue our talk about PFOA, PFOS, other contaminants that have been out in the news. I'd like to do that all at once. So we're thinking maybe in a month or so, with the holidays coming, November, December, it might be a little tough. But we're going to try to plan something again for a day and night. We could just do a preview of what the issues are and again, open it up to questions, which is always the best part. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So, Rich, just a question. You mentioned our readings are at the worst at 18 parts per billion, is that right?
For total chromium.
Yeah, okay. And then you said the World Health Organization is 50 parts per billion is the standard. Is that what they're working on?
Correct.
So would we necessarily use that as our standard now? Or, I mean, what are you thinking about as far as just making sure that we're right below as much as we can, I guess?
Right now, I'm relying on the worst case I see through the United States is California for hexavalent at 10 parts per billion, and we're below that. We're at 2.9. If California was to adopt a lower standard, they're looking at is probably being a health advisory, not a regulation, which is where I think New Jersey may move to as well. At that point, what we're doing is just advising the public, what precautions they could take, to protect themselves, from these levels.
Do you have any feel for when the EPA might come out with some standards on, this and say PFOA and PFOS? I know they're probably studying the bejesus out of it, but.
It's a great question. Actually, the village manager and myself are meeting with them tomorrow on a whole different, issue with the water utility. But when we do see them, we often ask that question, and you don't get a clear answer. You know, it's even at the state level as well, because it's either one of them could come out with their own health standard. They don't have to wait for one or the other. You know, the states could do it individually. And I know the article referenced that the state, you know, Water Quality Institute has been working on this for years, but there hasn't been any action by the government to enact any recommendations. You know, so I couldn't tell you. We do ask, you know, because we want to plan forward, you know, but we never get a clear answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have we seen any research where we can sort of look at across, you know, the country, different municipalities, what the levels are, and assuming the absence of any other contaminants, where there's a correlation to cases of higher instances of cancer and other types of...
We're not doing that. You know, that's where we rely on EPA and DEP. You know, myself included, we don't have that capability on staff. You know, none of us are scientists or chemists. You know, I'm an engineer by background. You know, so I rely on the experts for that. And that's really where the standards will derive from. You know, they look at, you know, case studies over the years, you know, their clusters, you know, where these clusters around this well, you know, where the people drinking that, you know, water at these certain concentrations, to then determine what effect, you know, it has and what level they should set. You know, these levels are becoming so low, there's not even a lab in New Jersey that can measure them. You know, right now we send these tests out to, I believe it's Indiana, to get the results. You know, so it's all new, you know, but there's more to come on it. You know, if they were to, say if New Jersey was to turn around tomorrow and just enact a regulation at the standard that was referenced in the article, we'd have to shut every single well down, and even the water we purchase, we'd have to stop. You know, so I believe that's a lot of what's being talked about and why there's a delay, you know, for it. So.
Are there any commercial type of filters or systems that you can install, you know, in the home for anyone who's particularly concerned? Are they effective?
You read my mind. From what we understand, reverse osmosis is the best filtration for it at the home. There's also something called ion exchange, but I don't know of any type of filter at home that has that. I'm sure there are. You know, but the majority of people that want to go to remove everything that's possibly in the water that they have fear of, the reverse osmosis is the best option. It's like taking the water and trying to pass it through a piece of cellophane. It's literally going to catch everything.
But they really have no way to measure that, the result of that. That's the one that wires around the tubing, right?
Yes.
It wires, right. So, but there's no real tangible way to measure.
The interesting, yes, and then the interesting part about it, it's very wasteful too. It's like 10-20% of the water that goes in is waste water coming out of that, you know, to cycle through that filtration. Right. One of the things we've been thinking about, and it's something that you can't do today, but maybe the state could think about in the future, is, you know, maybe we go to filtration at the point of use. You know, why not have every, you know, consumer have filtration instead of us trying to install it at every well or point of entry? Just something we've been throwing around, ideas at the table. You know, throw it out there because, you know, that would take a lot of push at the government level, even up to federal level. I don't think it's ever been done. So we are trying to think outside the box.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, I actually just really needed to thank both you and Dave Schreibner for really stepping up and putting out a terrific statement. You really did allay the concerns of many of the residents that were emailing and expressed concerns, so we're grateful for your responsiveness to that.
Thank you.
And we look forward to the forums because I myself, having attended, know they're well attended by members of the public and our customers. So that's also a great source of information and gives that kind of opportunity for Q&A and good information. So when we announce those, I'm sure everybody will be coming by and having a listen. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, our first item is approving a change order for distribution improvements at the Lakeview Extension. On May 25th, an award was given to Suburban Consulting Engineers in the amount of $36,480. At this time, an additional $9,300 is required beyond the original proposal scope, and this is for the additional work necessary. So this is for change order number 1.
So I just actually had a question. Was there something that was supposed to be attached to this? There
should have been the whole proposal from Suburban.
I don't think I have.
We didn't get that.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
So I actually, because I had...
You just have the memo?
By the way, my outgoing email wasn't working all day today, so I just realized everything was in my inbox. I don't have that, and I just thought it would be beneficial for everyone to go over.
Yeah, we had attached that to the memo. I can't tell you why you didn't get it, but I could describe it quickly.
If you would, please.
What the work involves. So essentially, we embarked on this project to look at a way to replace or clean and line 2 portions of main in our system, because we have reports of dirty water in those areas because the lines are very old and degraded, so the residents in those areas get brown water at times. So as part of that process, we employed Suburban Engineering. They've been looking at options. As part of that option, they came up with an additional recommendation to extend a portion of one of the mains we were looking at through a piece of property where there's an apartment complex in Midland Park. Okay. Currently, that main dead ends, so the water has a better chance of becoming stagnant. So by extending it, it would be looped, and there would be a means for the water to continue to move. So the change order essentially outlines that new work that wasn't part of the original scope. And the letter that would have been attached, explains that it's 450 feet of new main, extends through a private property, crosses a stream, which is part of why the change order cost is, as high as it is. We have to get a permit from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next one is for an extraordinary unspecifiable service award for lead, copper, and water quality parameter testing and consultation services. This is again to Agra Environmental, who we've used in the past. They're specialized in nature. They require expertise, extensive training, and a proven reputation, which is why it's an extraordinary and specifiable service. Ridgewood, they are also the firm of record listed in the village's water quality parameter monitoring plan approved by the NJDEP. So we are going with them for that, and the cost is $69,280. Okay, next.
Sorry, no questions, no comments? Go ahead, continue.
Go on. Okay, the next is state contract purchases. These are for materials and supplies. The original amount was for $45,000. They're requesting approval of an additional $25,000 for these materials. These are everyday materials and supplies.
Okay, questions or comments?
Okay.
Okay.
We'll move on to parking. The first item on parking is the vehicles and traffic, the parking restrictions on Pomander Walk. It limits parking on the north side of Pomander Walk to 2 hours between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday, with Sundays and holidays excluded. I know Councilman Seaton has been involved in this, correct?
Yeah, so I guess we're going to defer, if you want to open up, or Bernadette, do we have any?
No.
Okay, go
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I voted in favor of the parking limitations on Pomander Walk because it seemed like those residents had waited for a long time and they needed immediate relief. But I also said if we needed to, if it caused a knock-on effect or a spillover effect on the adjacent streets, that we should come back and revisit it. So, just to kind of compromise in the whole area, I feel like putting parking on the north side, pretty much the same restriction, the same 2-hour restriction that was in effect for both sides, because parking was allowed on both sides of the street previously. This would just limit it to the north side with the same 2-hour restrictions. We've gotten several emails that people are parking on Pomander anyway, regardless of the no parking policy, and residents have said that there has been an impact on Sherman and Stanley. So that's That's really the proposal. I'm not on the Citizen Safety Advisory Committee anymore, but I guess this came up at the last meeting, and they said that we should discuss it, so here we are discussing it.
So I'll take a stab at it as well. It did come up at the last Citizen Safety meeting, and I think I talked about it in my report last week. So it appears that that the residents of Sherman Place feel that they are being impacted by the action that was taken by the former council prohibiting parking all day on Pomander. The feeling at the meeting, and again, we had two different groups of individuals at the meeting. We had the group that lives on Pomander expressing their gratitude, as this resident just did, that it solved an issue on their street where the Sherman Place residents were saying you solved their problem and caused an additional problem for us. So, the group talked lively about the issue, but I think there's a bigger issue for us. In the interim, I got Mr. Hallaby actually sent me a picture, an unrelated street, but a similar problem where when you have narrow streets with parking on both sides of them, safety vehicles will have difficulty coming down. So I think that the bigger issue needs to be studied, because if we act quickly to solve the Sherman area or the Sherman Place street and go back to Pomander, the crux of it was Pomander unsafe, and is Sherman now unsafe? And that's the first item that we have to fix. We have to start with safety and then go to, reasonableness for everybody involved. So while I think this would add relief to Sherman Place, I would feel that we as a council need to examine a lot of different streets that may be having a similar problem, so that we can't just one by one have groups come and say, well, my street's bad now. All right, well, we'll fix your street. And then this person says, now you caused a problem on my street. I think it really has to be more of a comprehensive discussion on all the streets. And because the ordinance, the former ordinance is in place, and the relief is needed on Sherman, I think the Citizen Safety Committee talked about some immediate safety measures that we could do on Sherman. For instance, doing some additional painting of the lines, speaking with the property owner at the end of the street, actually maybe moving the tick marks so people can't park at the end. That might alleviate some of the issues. I know Jane is in the audience, and I think, maybe you want to come to the podium, I just have a quick question. I think that you contacted GW about the statement they had on their website regarding dropping your kids.
Right. That
So,
was,
if you could just help me out for a sec.
well, what happened was that in addition to the problems with Sherman Place, GW has a statement that says, here are some convenient drop-off spots like Madison and Monroe and Sherman and Washington. But then, eventually people got the idea that they could cut through that dentist parking lot to drop people off. Now, there used to be, a big sign. There's still a sign that says no through traffic, but it's kind of twisted and it's faded, so you can't really see it. So I asked, so they did send out an email, GW, to all the parents saying, don't have your child walk through there, don't drive your car through there. It's private property, so.
Right. See, the challenge that we had also was that the owner of the property was not inconvenienced. They didn't have a problem with people cutting through the property, so we really can't regulate private property and say, tell everybody not to drive through your parking lot if they're okay with people driving through the parking lot. So we have reached out to them to express to them, because maybe they don't even know it's an issue, perhaps they didn't, and that we could perhaps assist them, our engineering department, with maybe making a sign that says, no student drop-off.
Right.
So there's some ideas that we have that might alleviate some of the challenges on Sherman, but I think that, it's a bigger issue, and there's maybe some other streets that we should investigate and really think of more of a comprehensive way to handle it. So it's a thought, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I think it's more just that GW sent out the notice because Charlie DeMarco said, oh, that's a bad situation.
Yeah, nobody knew that it was on the site.
And so, and there are cars now going in Sherman Place to that parking lot, which used to be a do not enter sign. So you've got like two-way traffic and then students walking through. So hopefully it worked. I asked the principal to make an announcement. I'm not sure if she did yet, telling the students don't use that as a walk-through.
As a cut-through.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, but I do think that some of the issues on Sherman there are a lot of issues, but they always had parking on Sherman Place, but it was sort of distributed between the two streets. That's my only, thing. And I understand the citizen safety had to I would support my children if they made a decision I didn't particularly, care for. They said, well, we're not crazy about this, but we'll support you and what you want. So I understand how they reached, that conclusion was reached. Okay. And so, anyway, but hopefully the students will stop, but they're still going to be walking up Washington Place to West Side
Bagel Store. Yeah.
So we encourage,
you're right. We encourage the walking.
Yeah,
what we're trying
definitely.
to discourage are parents dropping all their kids to kind of cause havoc where it's really not needed.
Right.
And we're trying to disperse throughout. And we'd love everybody to walk to school. That would be ideal. And if parents could encourage their middle schoolers to walk, that would be great. But we're not there yet. So.
But I love the idea, consider maybe that whole neighborhood as Garfield and Sherman and Washington Place all together and make it,
figure it out.
Figure it out, right, as one big neighborhood.
Yep.
That's a great, thanks.
So that's where we're
Thanks,
going.
Jane.
Yep. So that's my kind of, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, so going back to what Deputy Mayor Seaton pointed out, when this first came up, I guess it was back in the spring, May, June, was when this ordinance was adopted. And at the time, myself and former Deputy Mayor Pucciarelli voted against it. And primarily one of the questions I had asked of the residents was, are you saying that you'll never, ever, ever, ever have anyone park on the street? And they repeatedly reassured us that they would have no one parking on Pomander. As it turns out, on my own visits, I've gone, every time I go down that road, there's somebody parked, whether it's vehicles, a couple of vehicles, landscaping trucks, and it's just the nature of living on a street and having a house. There are vehicles that do come and go, whether they're service people, housekeepers, guests, company, UPS, the mailman. People park. They come and go, the landscaper, friends for coffee. It happens. I think when we adopted this, the Sherman Place folks did come and forewarn us that this was going to happen, and I think we've all been on the receiving end of the great many photos that have been taken, and every time there's a complaint, I typically CC Councilman Walsh's liaison to Citizen Safety Advisory Committee. So it's just my view that, I'm supportive of restoring parking on the north side of the street, as Deputy Mayor Seaton has laid out in this change on the addition and the deletion. I just had one question, though. If you're adding the parking back to the north side, and I don't know, it's a technical question, did we have to then delete this, delete the parking prohibited on certain hours on both sides, and then add it?
It's all under delete, it just didn't all come on the same page.
And then where did you add back in, where do you add back in the no parking on the south side?
Well, you just permit parking on the north side.
Okay, so I see, so we're not,
Added,
so,
and
all
then
right,
this is
so it's by
deleted, and
default, I
that's-
got it, okay.
that's all
Got it,
kinda
great,
together,
okay.
just ran
All
on
right,
the
so we're
second
just
page.
not defining that there's no parking on that side, it just remains the same. Okay, good. Anyone else?
I like Councilwoman Walsh's suggestion. Maybe we have the engineering department look into sort of like a more comprehensive thing, because, off the top of my head, you'd maybe take a street, because we know we have different width streets throughout the village, so maybe you take a street that's 30 feet wide or 25 feet wide, I don't know what the number would be, and then you just kind of redo the ordinance to say that you would only allow parking on one side of a street if it's less than X amount of feet wide, whatever that number is. But I mean, I'm not an engineer, so the engineering department would have to, come up with something to sort of address that.
Right.
And again, to Councilwoman Walsh's suggestion that we need to look at it comprehensively. And, there are other streets that are very wide, like West Ridgewood Avenue, particularly near the Ridge School, where the fact there's no parking on the street is creating a tremendous problem and a safety concern with the backup on the line and the drop-off in the mornings. So, I mean, that's a street that can handle ample parking, I think, at least on one side, but again, we need to look at it, I think, best practices, what makes sense, and what the research shows is the best placement for parking and where.
Right. No, and I agree and appreciate that. And I think that it's true, because somebody has a problem, and then we have that knee-jerk reaction, and we fix one thing, and then it's the snowball that then we have the problem at the next, or domino effect, if you will. Okay, great, thank you.
So do we have a majority to do this next week, or are we going to have the staff look at it comprehensively?
Well, I mean, for me, I still think that we need to offer some relief as quickly as possible to the Stanley Avenue folks and Sherman, until at least offer some relief as we're looking at this, because right now I think the situation is just difficult at best. But whatever anyone else thinks.
Yes, okay.
Then, before it's introduced, I guess we noticed the residents of Pomander Walk.
Usually we do it after it's been introduced and let them know the public hearing's coming up and what date. So that's usually how we do it.
Okay, all right.
But,
great. No, great,
okay.
thank you.
All right. The next one is placement of parking meter kiosk at Chestnut Street parking lot. Chris Redesauter could not be here this evening. He's in school, but I'd just like to read some of his comments to take into account. Basically, he said for parking meter kiosks, you have to decide what type of system you want. It's either a pay and display or pay by space. The other thing is you have to decide if you want credit cards. If so, there'll be an additional charge probably. And he'd also recommended being in an enclosure to shield it from weather. And in addition, I believe there should probably be some parking, some security cameras in the area, because of the fact that I know with our previous kiosks, we had issues with it operating properly, but we also had issues with it being disabled, either by slugs or, foreign coins or gum, or, so it was a whole bunch of different things that occurred to it. And so unfortunately, near the end, I think it was working less than it was working. It wasn't working more than it was working. And so therefore, we were losing revenue by that. I know Bob Rooney's here, if you'd like him to come up and discuss it as well, or...
So here's what I kind of am thinking in this parking. The kiosk issue came up, and I know back when we went to All Park Mobile, we said we would revisit this, and it kind of came up recently again that there's no mechanism other than Park Mobile to pay in that particular lot. However, in reviewing, I know that Councilman Voigt had kind of put together a whole bunch of everyone's ideas, like as compiled all this great information sourced from everyone, and I realized that in that he had inserted meters.
Yeah, well, we could look at both, and actually...
Yeah, so I think that, well, my point was that in this kiosk, I think we should look at it, but I think we should kind of add it into the more broader conversation, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of segues into the next two, which are, I know Councilman Voigt and Councilwoman Walsh also participated in some of it, and Councilman Hache as well, so.
I think just before we start, I know Councilman, Deputy Mayor Seaton had some information, background information. He's like our sitting historian on everything Ridgewood.
Not all the way back, just recent history.
Everything Ridgewood. So he's just going to, he's going to kind of give us some background information and fill us in so everyone kind of knows where we've been, where we're at, and where we're thinking about going. So it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it would just be helpful to kind of let everybody know, just highlight some of the major changes that have taken place in the past few years downtown and some of the challenges that were associated with those changes and some of the successes. So I guess prior to about April 2009, parking rates were pretty much about 25 cents an hour throughout the village. They didn't change for a number of years. And enforcement times were from 9 in the morning till 8 p.m. And I know there was a variety of different spots. On-street parking was maybe restricted to 2 hours, but there was some 12-hour metered spaces in several lots, and then there was some, I think, 2 or 4-hour meters. So it was really different all throughout. So in April of 2009, enforcement times, in those enforcement times between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m., it was gleaned that the most revenue was generated between noon and 2 p.m. and 6 and 8 p.m. And I would venture to say that would probably be applicable today because of the explosion in the eateries in the central business district. So you have people coming in for lunch, and then you would have people coming in for dinner. And if you've ever been downtown past 6 or 7 o'clock, you've noticed that parking is kind of tight, put it mildly. Then, in August of 2009, enforcement times changed from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. That was implemented, I believe, with free Saturdays on the streets, but you still had to pay in the lots. So there's some different changes that were happening there. Then in October 2009, the village took over operation in the Chestnut Street lot from a private valet vendor who was there, and we just decided to part ways with them, so that brought revenue in from Chestnut Street into the fold. And then December of 2009, the village council changed rates from 25 cents an hour to 50 cents an hour townwide on the streets and in the lots. Some of the data from that period is kind of unreliable because there are several disruptions to parking revenue during this time. There was a six-week construction period at Progress, the Prospect Street parking lot between August and September when they redid the curb works and paved and did the lining and striping. All summer long on East Ridgewood Avenue, the streetscape project was in effect, and the town was replacing all the old light poles with newer light poles, and all the underground conduit had to be taken out and put back in, so there was a lot of disruptions to parking then. Then there was also the coin theft, which speaks for itself, and really outside of Ridgewood's control. We were also in the midst of the worst financial crisis in 80 years. So, 2009-10 was really rough for the merchants. There's a lot of vacancies throughout downtown. And there are some reasons that we could take control of, and then there were some reasons outside of the scope of what the village was able to really do. So all that kind of was discussed for a while. And then we got to May 2011, where all the lots were changed back to 25 cents an hour from 50 cents an hour, but the streets remained 50 cents an hour. The streets remained 50 cents an hour, and that's when free Saturday parking was started. It was in 2011, not back then. I misspoke. I apologize. The enforcement times also changed from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So now it was 12 hours. And all the parking lots were allowed 12-hour parking. So streets were still regulated, but it was 12 hours throughout all the lots. So some of the challenges with that was, interestingly enough at the time, 2010, 2011, there were complaints that there were too many open parking spaces in downtown, but again, we were coming out of a recession, and it was just a tough time. But we had a lot of vacant spaces downtown. After a couple of years after 12-hour parking was instituted, commuters began to find out that they could park for 25 cents an hour. I think that was like something like $3 a day. And they started to fill up the lots, and then the problem went from there's not enough spaces to, all the spaces were filled before 10 o'clock because all the commuters were coming in. So late in 2014, 12-hour parking in all lots was changed, and 2-hour parking was implemented, or then 2-hour parking on the street was changed, and we changed everything to 3-hour parking limit throughout the town. So streets, lots, everything had a 3-hour limit. And we also increased the rates of 25 cents an hour back to 50 cents an hour in the lots and in the streets. So everything was 50 cents an hour again, and everything was 3-hour parking again. Then in March 2015, we were dealing with the employee parking issue, and what came out of that was Cottage Place went from 50 cents an hour to 75 cents an hour, and the 3-hour parking limit there was changed to 8 hours to accommodate commuters, or to accommodate, I guess, some out-of-town commuters and town employees. Again, that was kind of backwards from tiered parking where we're moving now. I always thought that wasn't the best idea because what Mr. Damiano said, 75 cents an hour is the most expensive rate that anyone's paying for parking. It's the furthest away from the center of town, and you're requiring employees, many of whom don't make that much above minimum wage or minimum wage, to spend more. So that's where we are. And early in 2016, Park Mobile was introduced. So, I had mentioned that the current structure is backwards. We should be charging more closer to the action. I would support that. And, maybe reallocate parking in some of the meters. Instead of having most of the people in Hudson Street be commuters, you kind of follow the Walker report, the Walker allocation report that suggested 40% parking for shoppers and diners in the garage and 60% for commuters, with the idea that that could change. But we could do that right now with the Hudson Street lot, and just break it off in that way. And that was pretty much everything. That's the history of parking in a nutshell. I see Mr. Damiano. One, is it okay if?
Yeah, come on up, Tony.
Sure.
Yep.
Michael, that was an excellent report. Just a couple factors.
Just please identify yourself. Just identify yourself.
274 South Broad Street. Oh,
And your name.
Tony Damiano. In 2009, when we raised the meters to 50 cents an hour, everyone was outraged. I called 5 different towns comparable to Ridgewood, Montclair, Upper Montclair, I think it was Inglewood, Westfield. It was an eye-opener for me. Actually, those towns were at 50 cents an hour 2 and 3 years before us. Upper Montclair was 75 cents an hour on the street, which it still remains. Another factor, that Hudson Street lot was always good for employees and consumer parking. I don't remember what the hours were. But when the train station renovation happened, which really all we need to do is make it ADA compliant, but it just escalated. 55 commuter spaces were subtracted from that landscape, and the Hudson Street lot became 12-hour meters. So that lot was done at 7 in the morning because it became a commuter lot. And again, lack of employee spaces and consumer spaces. I just wanted to bring that up also. Thank you.
Thanks.
So why don't we turn this over to Councilman Voigt, because I believe he's done some work with the Financial Advisory Committee on tiered parking meter prices. If we want to start there, that might be helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Newsom. Could I take some liberties and maybe expand that a little bit, because the document is that possible?
Liberties.
Do it. Okay, so this is I think you should have copies of this in the audience, and feel free to read along, and hopefully at some point, if you have a question or a comment, please make it. So the intention here is to make some simple, quick fixes to our parking supply and demand that we can improve actually the supply. And we're looking most especially at a 3 to 6 block area. So that 6 block area is from Broad Street, right next to the train station, both sides of Ridgewood Avenue, down to Oak Street. So there's that 6 block area. And that 6 block area is mostly occupied 12 hours a day. It's 90+% occupied. And that seems to be the area that we're, I think in downtown, we're having the most problems with. If you go east towards the high school, you'll see that Cottage Place has plenty of spaces. You'll see, at times, you'll see North Walnut Street having plenty of spaces. A comment that Councilman Hache made is, we may have a distribution problem. He may be absolutely right. So here's some of the thinking that we're looking to do, and they're rather simple fixes, and hopefully they won't cost us a lot of money, and actually we may be able to make some money off of this as we're thinking about it. As an aside, we've been looking at this at the Financial Advisor Committee, and our parking utility we feel is an underutilized asset. We've got space there that's not being used, and it would be great to fill that space up. And so this is kind of the intention with this, with some of the suggestions that they're going to be made, and again, would love your inputs into this. The first one suggestion is to actually make signage, and this has been suggested by both Lorraine and Lorraine Reynolds and Gail McCarthy. It's a very simple fix to make sure people know that we have parking lots where to park, and so that would obviously necessitate us making signs for that. That's one simple fix. The other simple fix is to potentially tier price this high demand area. So the thinking would be as follows. Right now we pay for permit parking $750 per year. And you can park anywhere you want in the Central Business District for $750 a year if you're a resident. The thinking would be to raise the price closer to the train station, let's say make it $1,000 a year, and that's probably, we could probably look at 100 or 100 plus, 100 minus from that, with the intention of seeing if people would move based on that. In other words, if they didn't park in the Hudson Street lot or the Chestnut Street lot, and they would have parked other places, they would be $750 a year, but if they would have parked in Chestnut Street lot and the Hudson Street lot, and also on the other side of the train station, they would be charged $1,000 per year. The other thing we're thinking about doing, or is under consideration, is to change the metered rates close to the train station. So those metered rates would be, rather than 50 cents an hour, they'd be 75 cents an hour. And the intention with that is to see if we can move some of the employees to a less expensive parking area. And the thinking with the less expensive parking area would be, let's look at Cottage Place as a place to put the employees, or to encourage the employees to park there. And let's lower the rates at Cottage Place so it's affordable. So in other words, employees, and we'll focus first on the employees in this high density area. So those who are working in that high density area, they could have the option of parking on the street for 75 cents an hour, or parking in Cottage Place for 25 cents an hour. But also ask the employees in that area to have stickers or some kind of an identification that they're actually working in that area. So we would know if they're parking at Cottage Place or if they're parking on the street. So we'd be able to count the number of employees that we had in those particular areas. And this is a suggestion that Deputy Mayor Seaton had made, well, and I think it's a good one.
Actually, I always said it wasn't my idea. It was just a revival of an old idea, because when I worked in the Central Business District for 4 years, that was the case. You could spend, I think it was like $12 or $15 a year just to get a sticker slapped in your window that said you worked in the Central Business District. You'd come here and show pay stub with address on it, and then you would be able to repeat park at the meters. And you're able to park all day.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, that particular sticker would help us identify who or the employees in that particular area and where they're parking. And we could kind of count them along the way and figure out, okay, we have these many people parking in the high density area, and let's see if we can move them somewhere else. Other thoughts are to increase the number of customer metered parking at Hudson Street and at Chestnut Street. So there would be dedicated parking on Hudson Street, high prominent area on Hudson Street, so let's say it's 15 or 20 or 25 spaces that are right on Broad Street that would be dedicated solely to customers. Commuters couldn't park there, and it would be solely for customers. The other thing as well is we'd look at dedicated parking at Chestnut Street for customers, and let's say that's 15, 20, 25 spaces in that particular area. So those would all be freed up, so you'd have 40 spaces, additional 40 spaces for customers to be able to use who want to avail themselves of the high-density area. Couple other things, and then I'd like to open it up for discussion with the council, and if some people in the audience have suggestions as well. Let's see here. Oh, I think one of the important things we have to do here is we have to measure the success or failure of what's going on. So over the next 4 or 5 months, it's going to be important for us to understand if this is shifting or not. Okay, and if it isn't shifting, then we move on to Plan B. And Plan B might be looking at the Zabriskie lot and adding that in. It may be potentially adding spaces to Hudson Street rather than building the garage. In talking with John Jarr, we might be able to add 30, 40 spaces at Hudson Street just by simply repaving it.
And adding, because if you were to close up, I think we went through this as just kind of a quick thing. We realized that there were 4 driveways going in and out of Hudson Street, and if you were to turn the traffic pattern on an angle heading east and west rather than the current configuration of north and south and removing and including only one access in and out, you then you add on-street parking by about, I think, 5 to 6 spaces, and you increase, because diagonal automatically you increase, and it just makes it a more seamless, logical flow, and plus the parking lot itself is in pretty rough shape.
Yeah. So again, the goal here is to do this incrementally and to measure whether it's working or not, rather than us spending, money on a parking garage we may or may not need. And if we do need, a parking garage after 4 or 5 months, we've realized that there is just too much demand in that area, then, we've got our answer. We need a parking garage. So I'm going to open it up for discussion. Bernie, you and I actually on Saturday went to several businesses. I don't know if you want to go ahead and inform what we found, which I found was really interesting, by the way.
Sure. So, and I'd like, you did a nice format here of putting this into...
It was a good format.
So, as part of the ongoing discussion between all of the council members, the public, everybody that is interested in parking, the more information we have, the more statistics that we have that we don't already have, the better for everybody, so that when we make decisions, they're going to be sound decisions, and we're going to feel really good about making the decisions. We're not going to hesitate. We're going to, kind of plow ahead. So Councilman Voigt and I went to several businesses. I think actually 17 or 18 we got to in the short amount of time that we spent on Saturday morning, which was great for 2 reasons. Some of them knew us, some of them didn't know us, the businesses, so they got to meet Councilman Voigt and I, and we strongly encourage our fellow council members to come out with us the next time, and we can kind of split the town up and knock on doors, so to speak. But we gathered a lot of really good information. They were willing to talk to us and give us all the information that we asked. And really just had a simple conversation with each of the business owners about where they park, where their employees park, do they feel they need parking, what were their concerns about, anything related to parking. And some of the answers surprised us. A lot of them said they had no issue with parking and their customers had no issue. Some of them said to us that they had ample parking, however, there were residents in town who were parking in their lot and then jumping on a bus to New York City. And I said, well, that's a whole nother issue in itself that we could deal with. A lot of them said signage was a major issue. Nobody knew where to park. if they told their customers where to park. And the laugh of the morning was, Jeff and I kept saying, well, they can park at Cottage. We were literally across the street, and they said, well, that lot's too far. and we were like, it's right there. It's right across the street. And they're like, oh, that lot. So we really got an eye-opening of, signage and just education of some of the employees who are not residents of Ridgewood, who, jump out of the shower, get in the car and drive to work and just park wherever they can. The one person said she just parks on the street and feeds the meter. We told them, you're not allowed to feed the meter. And they said, says who? And I said, see that sign across the street? It says no repeat parking. And they're like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. So it was a lot of, it was interesting. It was fun. We actually really got to meet a lot of nice people. People who were in the stores chimed into the conversation that were from out of town. So we really got a lot of good information that Jeff actually did a nice job of putting into a grid here. But it was only 17 businesses that we got to. And I think if we as a council can get even more information, add it to the information that the Guild and the Chamber has, I think it's going to be helpful in the long run, because the businesses just want to succeed. There's really no other way to put it. They're there to succeed and to make a living, and we have to figure out a way to I'm glad you're in the audience. I see you there, smiling. Political science major there who actually was working. I'm going to call you out in the audience now. Was working and said, I'm so interested in this. I wrote a grant proposal. Can I send it to you? And I said, absolutely. So she sent us a grant proposal that she wrote. Nice. But that's really it. There's so much information that we can have that will help everybody on the dais, everybody and all the other organizations. If we can kind of use the momentum of what you've got going on, what you've got going on, what you've got going on, we can kind of move it forward. And it was fun. It was exciting. I think we spent 2 hours and it went by in a flash. And, I had to run and do stuff. Jeff continued up on another street, but it was a lot of fun and it was a lot of good information. So I think, we're really moving in the right direction. And
good. Mayor Newsom, I don't know if it's, as far as starting off, do you want to talk about, signage? Do you want to talk about pricing? And what would you suggest?
So actually, I thought maybe we'd hear from Councilman Hache first.
Oh, sure.
I thought.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah, I think, obviously, we always talk about the low-hanging fruit, and I think we have yet to exhaust all the low-hanging fruit. Signage is definitely one of them. I think it's shameful that the biggest municipal lot in town doesn't have a sign directing anyone to go to it. I've talked to a lot of folks from out of town to just sort of figure out what is the parking experience at Ridgewood. Everyone complains that it's so bad, but people keep coming to town to eat and do everything else. And most people, shockingly enough, assume that the Cottage Place lot is part of the Board of Ed building. They don't know it's a Board of Ed building. They assume it's an office building, and that's private parking. Because as you're driving up East Ridgewood Avenue or down Franklin, you don't really see the meters. It just looks like it's part of the whole complex. Sure. So that was interesting in terms of, our perception of things is, hey, Cottage is there. It's simple. But I think signage is one of them. I know that village manager has been working with the signal department. The beauty is that we have our own machines that can make signs. So we're trying to figure out what's the best configuration, obviously take into account something not too big where it blocks the visibility from drivers, and also but small, not too small where you can't see it. And that could be a great business, by the way, selling signs to other towns. I think we can.
I do just want to mention those will be installed by the end of next week between Franklin and East Ridgewood on both Cottage and Walnut.
Perfect. So, you're saying parking signs?
Yeah, public parking, yes.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah. So, see?
And the other low-hanging fruit is, it's enforcement. All the solutions that we can come up with are worth nothing if at the end of the day, we can't enforce. But in all fairness, that enforcement has, and I think that's part of the exercise here, is we can't enforce if we're not giving folks the option of where to park. Tony Damiano, great observation. Why are we charging more for Cottage Place? We want to incentivize folks to park there, and we need to direct them, on where to park. We look at many different things. For one, I'm a commuter, and I'll probably get stoned by everyone on the platform next time I go to work. But I think that, the commuter spots are a particular issue because, those spots today, if you go in, and I know Mr. Hallaby has made this observation plenty times, you go down to a train station by 6:30, 6:45, no spots. If you go on Hudson to grab coffee across the street at Sook, by 9 o'clock, it's full. The issue with, and I call the area around the train station, so Broad, Hudson, it's really the red zone. That's really where any commuter spot is extremely valuable because that spot, that vehicle stays there stagnant for the whole day, stays 12 hours. If it wasn't there, that spot could potentially turn over 12, 24 times. Maybe someone just dropping into a business and make a quick purchase or an hour at lunch, somewhere. So those spots should command premium pricing. I agree with you. And if you look at sort of the breakdown of $750 a year, what we charge today, it's about $3.12 a day. If you assume, 20 day of work during the month. So that, in reality, is actually cheaper than what we have proposed that employees pay at $80 a month. Ends up being almost $1,000 versus $750. So we're giving the incentive. Again, the incentive is to a commuter, not necessarily for the employees to find these solutions. So we have to look at that, and I think a good way to do that would be to have color coding of the different lots. So the red zone, right? We have a red tag. If you move further down towards the high school. Looking at Chestnut, for example, that's 65 spots in Chestnut. That is our biggest enforcement problem today. Maybe we can, but also the pricing is only going to get you so far. You also have to couple that with limiting the number of spaces, because the pricing for some folks, guess what? It goes from $750 to $250. I'm not going to park in Cottage because you're going to charge me more, and I'm not going to change my job just because it's more expensive to park in Ridgewood. So some folks are just going to pay it. So we need to also limit the amount. At Hudson, for example, I think we can do that. Chestnut is the other one, so out of the 65 spots, we can dedicate 20 spots to commuters. And as you go further down the road, and you end up at Cottage, which should be the cheapest lot, that being whatever is the base rate today, $750. I think that's a good way to sort of direct the folks that are taking up very valuable spaces to where there's supply. There's always a question, do we have a demand problem, or do we have a parking distribution problem? I think it's a combination of the two. Demand obviously comes not only from our patrons, but also from employees. People need to park, to go to work. And we understand that we have to be sensitive to that. The distribution problem, which is another name really for supply, it ends up being much more of a mismatch between where our greatest demand is and where our greatest supply is. Our greatest demand is, towards the train station. Our greatest supply is, towards Maple Avenue. That's a significant mismatch. So that's, the only concern that I would have with that is that the tier pricing for on-street parking, we have to be very careful with, because we want to have the demand from patrons. I mean, that would be a great problem that we would love to see throughout the entire CBD. So the demand is not so much the problem, it's really providing the supply to deal with that demand. The tier pricing, again, to be careful with that, because we also don't want to penalize the areas that really need the most parking relief. Because in a way, we understand there's a problem, there's an issue, but it's almost exploiting the fact that folks, would have to pay a bit higher to park in those areas. So I'm sure we can come up with ways to look at it, more creatively. But, in terms of supply, we have been looking at the Zabriskie lot. Could be an option. Who knows? Is it really necessary? It's hard to tell what the actual need is for utilization of the spots that we have available in the municipal lots until we really are able to do the combination of all these things. Low-hanging fruit, enforcement, and being able to provide the supply. And then we'll really see what the actual need is. And that will really help to see what the actual need is at Hudson. Some people may argue that it's 400 spaces, some people may argue that it's much less. But we really don't get a true sense of what the actual need is unless we've done a better job of really redistributing that supply of spaces. The other issue is, again, Mr. Damiano, the website. We're working on revamping the website. There are actually a lot of other issues with the website that we need to address. But that's part of it. The signage we already got started with. If we end up needing, to look at Zabriskie, there are other factors to consider as well. Lighting, safety concerns. I know that there was a significant amount of employees parking behind, what would you call that? The block of stores where Joseph A. Bank is, the running store, Arthur Groom.
Yeah.
Seems to me that a lot of that is being taken up by employees. Again, if cottage is an option, I mean, it's 150 spots roughly. If we can get folks there. The fact that customers will have parking now behind the stores is great because that would open up even more on-street parking. And you're always going to have folks who are going to say, hey, parking's not a problem, or if it's not that bad. And parking, you find, it's not a problem until you can't find a spot, and that's the issue. And it's crazy because sometimes you come into town and you can't even stop at the post office. And then I was in town having lunch on Monday, and there were 14 spots on Oak, which never happens. So it's strange, but at the end of the day, we're really need to see where the dust settles before we can come up with what the actual additional parking need would be in terms of adding additional supply.
Mayor Anderson, can I make a couple more comments?
Sure, go ahead.
Good, thank you. So one of the things we looked at on the FAC is we actually looked at if we changed the pricing on the high demand area and repricing the permits from $750 to $1,000, and then repricing the meters from 50 cents to 75 cents an hour, and extending the hour from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Well, it's 10 to 6.
6 now.
Yeah, so I'm making it to 7 o'clock. And so that just by doing that in that 6-block area, we could realize about $450,000 extra dollars. So, we certainly could use those extra monies if we decide to go that way for other purposes.
Yeah. So my thing is always this. We have a balancing act, and it just kind of goes back to that whole conversation even with PSE&G. Our businesses really have so many obstacles in their way. And I can drive up the street, I can actually walk. It's the same distance for me to walk from my house to the Central Business District as it is to walk to Lord & Taylor. I can actually drive to both with the same thing. I can park for free at Lord & Taylor, but it would cost me to park downtown. So I think it's really important that we have to balance the on-street parking as shopper parking, because we don't want to outprice the neighborhood and dissuade folks from coming to the village to shop because the pricing's too high. I'm a big believer, and I think this came up when we first were working on tweaking the prices originally to 50 cents and the Cottage Place lot. I actually felt that we were overpriced for our employees. I always feel that, you got somebody making, I don't even know what minimum wage is now, $9.75, $10, is it $10 even? Is it minimum wage? I don't know. In any event, sorry. $8.25. I mean, $8.25. So you have somebody working downtown making $8.25. Thank you.
We need her.
And here I am thinking it's $10. Everyone's going like, woohoo, yeah, we're going to shop. $8.25, and then you got to pay. You take money. You got taxes. You got Social Security. You got everything coming out of that, and then you got to pay the other money for parking. So I think those are the areas I really like to be cognizant of not outpricing our parking for shoppers and really being aware of the burden it is on our employees that are in all likelihood making minimum wage, maybe $1 more or so. So it's really something that we need to balance. I wholly agree with the allocation and the tiered parking on the commuter passes. I think is a great opportunity, and I think when we kind of spread that out, we'll have a much better outcome, and I think it's all really positive. I'm curious to know if you guys did any shopping when you went out downtown or had anything to eat, but that's a whole other issue. So I think this is like absolutely fantastic. I think we're getting the right signage. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, and we'll just have to, any of our changes that we decide to implement, we just have to put this into an ordinance and get it rolling, because everything is timing. And if we're going to do the tiered pricing, we have to be aware of the timing on that. We have to introduce, we have to have a public hearing, and then we have to have the turnaround time for it to be implemented. And go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, we actually have to introduce in October.
Right,
So
yes.
I figure we have October 5th to firm it all up, and then October 12th, we'd have to introduce, November adopt, and then it could be effective January 1st.
Yeah, so it's really, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, by the way. Thanks, Susan. I'm just curious, I know that people in the audience are probably either scratching their heads or actually may agree or disagree with this. And Mike, please.
Well, you know, we can't, actually,
we
don't.
can't do that?
No. we
Oh,
don't
okay,
do that.
sorry.
Okay,
So,
sorry.
well, I guess
Sorry.
a public comment after? Is that?
Yeah, you can
okay.
come to public
Yeah.
comment at the end.
Yeah.
Absolutely, at the end, you
Yeah.
can have public comment. But I think we have to firm this up. So what we're going to do is, if it's okay with everyone, we're going to put this back on our agenda and firm these numbers up.
Sure.
Because also it takes time. We have to change the meters. There's a whole bunch of things that have to come into play. If we're talking about color coding, maybe two people want to work together and decide on what kind of color coding and how that all works. I think it's really valuable input to get from the Chamber and the Guild, just to better understand the needs of the part-time employees, the minimum wage, you know, whatever it is, you know, just to understand that we're not hurting anyone. And move forward from there. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just had one other comment, and Jeff and I talked about this and disagreed a couple of times. So the parking permits that you buy annually, I am a little concerned that it's going to cause a hardship for some people that are commuters. You know, the early bird gets the worm. Whoever gets there first gets to park there. They have a permit just like everybody else. And I would hate for us to charge, you know, the $1,000 and some people be priced out simply because they have to pay $1,000, then they have to pay a monthly train ticket, then they have to get their Metro card, and you know, that's my only concern, that for some people $1,000 might not be an issue, but for others, you know, the $750 is a stretch to begin with, maybe, and now we're just going to say, well, we're just doing this, I don't want to say arbitrarily, but, you know.
So is it something, just because I don't disagree with that, is it something to say that
how about we do a lottery?
Well, or not, maybe a lottery, but if you're picking up, if we do the color coding, let's just say that Hudson Street is purple because you're going to be Hudson Street.
Because he always wears purple?
Cottage will be blue because Jeff's wearing blue. Okay, so if
I get brown, I guess.
Okay, brown. Okay, you could be chestnut.
Wait a second. He's more expensive than me then.
He's pricier. So in other words, so if we were to take, like, say for instance, we say on the parking passes, the commuter passes go on sale on whatever date.
It's usually mid-December.
Okay, mid-December. So on mid-December, it's a first come, first serve. So once the purple sell out at the 7th, whatever the number is, whatever number we establish, once the purple sell out, then you have a choice to say, the next tier is then brown. So if we don't tier the pricing, what we say is first come, first serve. If you're there, you get the purple, you know, or maybe somebody wants the blue because, you know, so maybe that's an option. I'm just throwing it out there.
That's an idea.
Yeah, and so if they bought the purple, okay, they could park anywhere if they wanted to. And then if they bought the blue, they'd only have to park at, you know, they can only park at North Walnut.
So, okay, so in other words, like, say a Cottage Place parking space would have the ability to park purple, chestnut, and blue. But then if you're chestnut, you can only that, okay, that makes sense, right? Or the purple could park in chestnut too. So that
I think one more point about the pricing and really incentivizing people to use the lots. Most people don't like to use lots to go shopping in and out of town. That's what my understanding is of the preference. People rather find a spot right near the store where they're going to. But there are a lot of folks who feel that the 3-hour limits currently that we have don't give them enough time. So maybe we can incentivize folks to, if you want to park in a lot during the weekend on Saturday, you know, limitless parking, but be able to go and park and go grab a bite to eat, you know, go take the kids to the movies, whatever it is, and be able to spend the whole day in downtown if you wanted to, and not have to worry about coming out and fitting a meter, you know, somewhere. And I know that, you know, maybe the usage of that pass from a commuter, because, you know, many folks commute only Monday through Friday, But having the ability to use that pass during the weekend at those lots, would also be very helpful.
Well,
That's a good
actually,
idea.
our RPP now does allow you to park in any lot at any time without paying the meter,
Right,
every day.
so saying, without having the differential, just any pass during the weekend, you can
I
park
see.
anywhere, right?
I see what you're saying.
But Ramon, you're saying to maybe even price it differently? I mean, if they wanted to do that kind of 24/7, or
No, just, if they wanted to come in on the weekend, instead of just knowing, not holding them to that particular color coding
For the week, yeah.
for the
yeah,
weekend.
yeah.
So that way, if you want to come in with your family into town,
Yeah.
spend the day in downtown, we want you to do that, and don't feel like you're beholden to whatever lot you've bought the pass for.
So the weekend is anything goes, but on the weekdays, actually, we can't say that the purple can park in the blue because you've allocated X
Correct.
number of purple,
Correct.
X number of so that doesn't
That does
actually
not.
work.
But the weekend you do.
The one thing I will say is,
And
yeah.
First come, first served.
Yeah, now, when we were changing from the 2 to 3 hours, I mean, I always felt that we should have gone longer. I think I was making a strong argument for at least 4 hours because I gauged my time from one end of Ridgewood Avenue, meandering down, having lunch, and kind of gauging that it would probably take me about 4 hours to do it. I always felt that was a good number, but if somebody thinks it should be longer, that's another good question, because if we're going to change the anything on the meters, we really want to do it all in one shot. So we
Yeah, we
really
really
want to
have
kind of
to.
have this nicely wrapped up.
Right.
So if there's a thought about that, let's put it out there now and firm it up by next Wednesday. So any thoughts on the length of time that we want?
Oh, for the meters?
Yeah.
For on-street or on the lots, sorry?
So I would say on street.
On street.
Or both.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would try to consult with the business community first, because, I mean, there's a lot of strong opinions about that regarding what the turnover is. I know that at one point in time when it was, and I'm sure Mr. Damiano, as a historian, will be able to tell us what the concerns are with the extension or the shortening of, so I'd love to hear that feedback first.
So if we get all our feedback and have something in place by Tuesday, by Wednesday, planning board's Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So in place by Wednesday, then what we can do is just refine it from there and be ready to go for the 12th.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, that's a plan.
Great, thank you.
Good, great,
Okay,
thank
so
you.
we'll
And thank you,
solicit-
Jeff and Bernadette, and everyone for all this really great input.
Okay, we will solicit the Chamber of Commerce and the Guild and get feedback on your recommendations for the streets versus the lots and the hours, so to get the proper turnover. And obviously, Mr. Rooney will be a big part of this because he's our parking utility director. So, and we'll bring something to you next week to discuss.
And Bob also wants to make a lot of money, too. That's what I'm thinking.
That number sounded high, though. Check your math, I don't know. Okay. So
our,
moving on.
Yeah, our next, we're actually under budget is our next, and that's from our treasurer. And this is, we have received a FEMA grant for, which requires matching funds, and it's for $75,000 to provide generators for critical facilities within the village. And so these two resolutions, one will allow the grant money to go into the 2016 budget, and the other will allow the matching funds to be appropriated. So this way, we'll be able to accept those grants.
Any questions?
Yeah, Heather, where is the generator going to be?
Do you know? Oh, you want to come up on?
Yeah, come on up. Thanks. I don't know offhand.
Keep doing this. Be a portable generator where it could be used at
Yeah.
other facilities, and
Okay.
depending on where the need is.
So it's mobile?
That's my understanding. I don't have the
Okay.
grant application,
So it's got to be pretty big then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously, there's, if it is that big, we have the means to move it.
Yes, we do.
Okay,
We have the equipment.
okay. And this isn't like the generators that when we've had storms and the lights go out, and we bring the little generators.
I think this
It would be
is
used for those types of purposes.
This is more for our facilities to
Yeah.
keep them up and running.
Okay,
So for example, if the firehouse went down
Yeah.
and we needed to have communication set up there, we could bring the generator to that location.
yeah, okay. All right, perfect.
Okay.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions? Moving on.
Our next one is a policy, which is art displays at Village Hall, and this is a discussion item.
Oh, Bernadette. Oh, Ridgewood Arts Council, I think this is your discussion item.
Yeah, so one of the topics that came up in the Arts Council meeting was the display of the paintings, pictures, all different types of art throughout Village Hall. Most of the art, if not all of the art, had something to do with Ridgewood. So it was very specific when they were doing the project, and it was thought by the Arts Council that all of the art that was put up would be permanent. And they also have additional art that was donated that has not been installed yet, and wanted to get an idea of where the art was going to go, when it was going to be hung, or could they hang it, and I quite honestly didn't have an answer for them. So, because I wasn't really sure of the process that happened last time when the art was hung. So I think that, it's open for discussion as to the remaining pieces of art, additional art for the future, and what was the process or procedure for hanging art, changing art. I know that a resident had come and commented on the pictures behind us at some point. So I think it's just kind of open the conversation of what is the process and procedure of hanging art, changing art, and art in Village Hall.
Okay. So actually, let me just start. Let me start. So when the Arts Council, what year was that formed? Was it 2014? Is that when? Actually, it must have been 2014, right? Okay. So I don't think that there was ever any established parameters about the art that was going to be placed in Village Hall. As a matter of fact, I don't even recall it being a discussion. I thought it was a council that was intended to just foster art throughout the village as a whole. So I actually was quite surprised myself when the art was placed on the walls, and to understand that it's permanent, because at that point I thought there was some discussion on the sideline. It wasn't like a council discussion, but that it would be rotated out. I also do understand, however, that this artwork is now owned by the village.
Correct.
So we own any artwork that's currently in Village Hall is owned by the village. So there was actually no parameter set for what the plan was for permanency, for rotating, for how it would be placed, where it would be placed. There was no discussion. It just was a project that was taken on and completed, or incomplete, I guess, at this point, because there's more artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we would have to ultimately decide what the details of that and how to proceed from here. So anyone?
Is it appropriate to have Pinocchio on the way up to a courtroom?
Nice. Yeah. I don't mind switching the art out periodically. I think that's probably a good thing, at least for the artists in the town. It'd be a nice showcase for them. There are some things, though, that I think are probably, I'm not saying that it's not the right word, but priceless. We might want to make sure that we put somewhere in a place that they remain. And, one of the things that I like is the Red Cross thing that's out there, believe it or not. I mean, there's a lot of history in that. And so I don't know if we're going to, frankly, I'm reluctant to remove that. But, I mean, the other stuff, I don't mind moving around itself, so.
There's a company out in Pennsylvania that takes a very unique approach at art. They have a massive art collection, and they have pieces of art everywhere. And what they do is they have what they call the wall of shame. So employees can anonymously say, hey, I don't like the piece that's hanging on this wall. So any artwork that's identified as sort of not pleasant looking, they will put in the art wall of shame. And anyone who picked a piece of art from the art wall of shame got to choose whichever piece of art they saw anywhere to hang by their desk, by their office.
Oh, that's nice.
So it was a sort of a reward for taking on something that somebody else doesn't like.
Hi, Bernie. You're the liaison.
So we do own all of this art.
Yes, we
So, you know, again, in discussing moving art or changing art, if the art comes, if there's additional art that's coming in, I think they said that there's like 10 or 15 pieces that were donated that are still looking for a spot to be donated. And I think that's a great idea, Ramon, in terms of the staff can look at that art and say, you know, I'd like this in my office, or however we can disperse the rest of that. But I guess what would be the policy for somebody else saying, you know, I painted this great picture and I want to hang it in Village Hall, but I want to hang it in such a place that it's going to, you know, I guess there's going to have to be some sort of parameter or rule so that there's no, you know, hurt feelings, maybe.
You know,
I'm not an artist, so you wouldn't be seeing any of my items on the walls.
Stickman.
But you know, I guess that's the question. How do you even go about it? I'm not really sure.
So I think, I mean, my thought would be that first to establish some guidelines and memorialize those guidelines, and then think about logistics, because we have to then remove the artwork, store artwork, rotate artwork. We have, I guess, holes in the walls now. I guess there's holes that now exist that didn't exist. I don't know how the name tag, the artwork identifier is mounted. I think that's, is that like a double stick, like foam core thing, it looks like? So I think what we'll do is, and I don't know if it's something that you think it's beneficial to work with the Arts Council on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were puzzled when I questioned them. They were kind of puzzled, and they said, "What do you mean procedure? We just put the art up." And you know, so
yeah, like I said, I don't think it was ever anything that was even discussed that artwork was going to be permanently installed in Village Hall, and so there was just never a discussion. My recollection, it was,
I think it was more of a statement. I don't think there was an actual discussion.
Right.
Right.
So if we can come up with some guidelines, and then we could memorialize that, and at least they'll have some, and how would we would we just put that in there, like their...
Could we do it through a resolution?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no need for an ordinance.
Right.
It's a matter
so
of
is this
working with the
guidelines
committee.
just for Village Hall or Village properties? Because
I think we should have Village properties.
It all depends upon what the extent of the use of the Ridgewood Arts Council is going to be. If you wanted to do more than just provide art to this building, you want to have it provided for other village buildings, then you've got to extend it. But if it's just for this and then fostering the arts in the community in other ways, that's something different. So I think you got to decide about limiting either to here or allow it to go to other buildings.
Why don't we just start with only this building? At least that gives us a place to start.
Okay.
And then we just get some guidelines. We'll put it in with their charter and everything else, and we're good to go.
And who insures this stuff? Is this done in a separate policy for each piece, or is there like one big policy where it's insured?
You know, I don't know that it's insured. Many of the pieces are paintings that were done by residents. So they're resident created pieces of artwork. I don't know about Pinocchio, actually. I don't guess. I don't even speculate on that. So I don't, you know, they're resident artwork.
And is there, I mean, beyond the pieces that we acquire and add to the collection, maybe have a designated area where any local artists can kind of showcase their artwork, so anybody coming into Village Hall?
Well, that's what I was saying. We have that at the stable.
Right, we have it at the stable.
But at Village Hall, where you have a lot of traffic of people coming in and out, you know, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just figure out what guidelines are, and then we can kind of refine from there and then move forward. Okay. Great. Okay, moving on.
So our next is operations. As you may know, we have a display of 34 posters in our pedestrian underpass at the train station, as well as in the interior of the train station. And those posters are put up, and we realize 60% of the revenue, and the posters are done by a company. Our contract is up with them, but they did have a one-year extension. It's at the same 60% that we would get 60% of the revenue, same terms and agreement, and so we are recommending the extension of the agreement.
Heather, where is this money applied to? Where does this revenue go?
General fund.
Goes to the general
That's what I
fund,
thought.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, any questions?
The next one is a shared services agreement. This is exciting. I think I'm going to have Rich Calvi come up for this one. Washington Township currently has a shared services agreement with Bergen County for fleet maintenance and vehicles repair. And they actually approached us, and Bob, I'm sorry. And they approached us to see if we would be interested in providing that service to them. So we actually came up with a proposal, and I know that Dan Keeley, our new superintendent, as well as Rich and Bob, all met with representatives of Washington Township and kind of have gone through this. So I'll turn it over to them at this time.
Thank you. It's been a joint effort between Fleet and Finance to really put forward the document you have in front of you today. We're really excited about this opportunity. Our fleet department's taken a total turn from where it was about a year ago when we had the retirement of every single mechanic that's been on staff for the history of the division. We have a brand new staff. They're young, excited and experienced. We now believe we have the ability to do more than just maintain our vehicles. Washington Township's a very good first step because they're very small. It's about 30 vehicles that we would maintain, in addition to some smaller vehicles like lawn mowers, snow blowers, etc. So the agreement you have in front of you has a very good competitive price. It's $65 an hour. For the larger vehicles, there's an upcharge on parts. I think it's 10%. That's to cover our administration and purchasing. But the big part of it really is the preventive maintenance. We would do all preventive maintenance on every single vehicle. That would be a flat charge, per vehicle per year. So on the basis of doing that, and in addition any repairs that come out of that maintenance, it's a win for both Washington Township and the village. The rate that we'd be putting out would in turn, pay not just for the service and the parts, but help us fund part of what we're doing to maintain our vehicles as well. So there is an income, part to it. We want to get into the actual numbers tonight. We want to really float the idea in front of you, and if you are interested, Washington Township is very eager to move forward. We wanted to possibly have another discussion. Part of it may even warrant a closed session discussion because this is going to be a negotiation. There are some numbers involved, in terms of, profit and so forth. So with that, if there's any questions you have, Bob and I certainly can answer.
Questions?
So Rich, the mechanics that we met, I guess, in June and July, are they still there?
Yes.
Yeah, I was really impressed with them, by the way. They were good. So, yeah.
We have 3 full-time mechanics and 2 part-time.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Just, Rich, I read the agreement. There's a couple things I wanted to talk to you and Bob about, but...
Okay, definitely.
I don't know if I just haven't seen it yet, but do you know how big their fleet is?
They have 30 vehicles.
Okay, oh, good.
And this would be everything from fire trucks, ambulances, down to small utility vehicles and cars.
So just, this is a pilot. If, after a couple of months we feel it's not going to work, we have the option of moving out. But if it does work, we do have other opportunities for other types of services with municipalities that we feel we can cover and make money on.
That's great. Thanks.
Great.
Washington Township in particular is interested in street sweeping and possibly purchasing fuel from us as well.
Oh, okay.
Chris isn't here, but I think this is a great partnership. We had talked at Citizen Safety about our street striper, that was on the fritz, I guess, and a street striper. And I said, well, can we borrow from another town if we only have to do so? This is great that we're starting to do the sharing because maybe they have a street striper that we can, say not only are we going to fix it, but we can maybe borrow yours and stripe some streets and some areas that need it.
Yeah, we do a lot of that currently with all types of equipment. We even borrow a garbage truck now and then from Glen Rock.
Yeah.
you know, we return the favor by providing anything they may need,
Yep,
you know, with all the surrounding towns.
it's great.
So,
Do we have a pretty good street striper?
I haven't seen it.
I had to say that. I'm sorry.
I got to say that real quick.
So I think this is really exciting, and you and I had this conversation, so it's a great opportunity, and I think it's going to work nicely.
It's a really good idea. Thanks for all the work that you put into it, and possibly opening the doors to other shared services with other towns. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, our next item is Mr. Rogers is going to give us a litigation update on some of the litigation that's ongoing with the village.
We don't normally talk about litigation in open session, and when I was asked to do this, I wanted to make sure that we didn't divulge anything that we'd be normally talking about in closed session. But there are a number of litigation matters that I think the council wanted to make everybody aware of and what was going on. The first one I'll start with is the Ridgewood water litigation that involves the communities of Wyckoff, Midland Park, and Glen Rock regarding their issues with regard to the rates. There's a trial date coming up in mid-November for this case. I have to say the attorneys for Wyckoff, Glen Rock, and Midland Park have adjourned this trial date because of differing reasons over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. And we've certainly been ready to take this to trial since early in the summer or late spring. But in any event, there is also a mediation session continued from the spring set up in October with the hope of resolving it without having to take it to trial. So I think obviously if something happens with regard to that, everybody in the public will be notified if the matter does resolve by mediation. Otherwise, there will be a trial and hopefully an ensuing decision by the court sometime soon, probably by the end of the year. There may be a delay because of the complexity of the case, but there may be delay in getting an opinion out right away. One of the other matters that we're dealing with is declaratory judgment action on affordable housing. All seems quiet right now. I can't say that any further than tonight's meeting. It might be exploding tomorrow, but right now all is quiet. There is a status conference set up in October. We maintain our immunity against builders' remedy lawsuits for the time being and until the status conference, until we see what else is going on. The court has asked and requested that mediation sessions continue. I've made our court-appointed master aware of that. Nothing's been scheduled yet for any mediation sessions. Those mediation sessions that take place are among the village and the interveners in the lawsuit, which include Fair Share Housing Center, KK developers, actually the 4 developers that are involved in the CBD developments. So when and if that ever gets scheduled, we'll certainly try and alert you so everybody's aware of the mediation session coming up. There's one of the other litigation matters is Valley Hospital, and it just so happens that today I received in the mail a decision from the appellate division that granted the village's application to appeal the decision interlocutory, which means that the word interlocutory means that before the final decision is made. Even though that there was a decision on the trial that was rendered by the judge back in May or beginning of June, the judge retained jurisdiction because the judge requested that, or required and ordered that the village council adopt ordinances consistent with the what I'll call the Whispering Woods master plan, the one that was adopted by the planning board back at the end or middle of April. We appealed that order requiring us to do that, and we appealed the decision of the court that was rendered after trial. Because she retained jurisdiction, the case wasn't over and wouldn't have been over until we satisfied all the requirements of the adoption of those ordinances. To us, it didn't make sense that we would adopt ordinances and then appeal them right away, and we'd challenge the ordinances that we were about to adopt. It just didn't make sense. So we filed a motion for leave to appeal an interlocutory order, or basically a series of interlocutory orders, and the court, the appellate division, granted our right to appeal them. It's kind of an exceptional relief that's given by the appellate division, because the appellate division doesn't like to grant interlocutory appeals or to grant a ability to file an appeal on an interlocutory order, because they'd rather have the whole case in front of them. And if they get in the habit of doing it, while the case is still going on, they'd get bogged down with appeals, because there's also still an appeal allowed afterwards when the case is completely finished. But the appellate division permitted it. The appellate division permitted it in the Ridgewood water rate case as well at one point or another, when there was a decision by the same judge in that case, and they overturned that. Certainly hopeful that the relief that we're requesting is going to be granted, or at least looked at in a way that we think is the best and favorable light for the village. And there'll be more on that as we go forward. One that we weren't prepared to talk about, but I see many of the plaintiffs in the audience tonight, is the lawsuit that involves the referendum on the vote on the Hudson Street parking lot. And just so everybody knows, we're trying to resolve that one, and it's a matter of being able to procure documents. We have most of the documents, but we're still waiting for documents from the Bergen County clerk. Heather, Donna, and Eileen Brennan have been after the Bergen County clerk on a regular basis to try and get these things up. We still haven't gotten them. So we still haven't received them. As soon as we do, we're going to provide them to plaintiff's counsel. He and I have been in touch with each other. He's been patiently waiting for them. We've been desperately trying to get them. So as soon as they come in, hopefully we'll be able to put that to bed. So that's kind of the status of some of the major litigations that are going on.
So, thank you, Matt. We have we appreciate this. We have residents that ask all the time on different items, and we're always apprehensive to comment on matters of litigation, and so we appreciate this kind of an update.
I mean, we can certainly do it on a regular basis.
I'm going to be doing it on a regular basis, actually, and with that, we'll go to the manager's report.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's besides it.
Now you're on the spot. Okay. Manager's report, yep.
Okay, manager's report. PSE&G restoration, there's been a lot of PSE&G work on various streets, most notably recently Glen Avenue. That will not be paved this year. They're still doing service connections, and if there are any particularly bad sections on Glen Avenue, please email the village manager's office and let us know, and we'll see if they can be patched as best as can be done. Glen Avenue will be paved by the end of May 2017. The underground electric in Broad Street needs to be done before there are any closures of the resurfacing of West Glen. And again, the underground electric on Broad Street will begin January 9th, 2017. A portion of Prospect Street in the CBD will be resurfaced this year from a gas installation that was done last year. Tilcon's doing the paving work for PSE&G. There are approximately 8 to 10 streets that PSE&G worked in this year, and they're ready for resurfacing, and they'll be doing this the second week in October, weather permitting. And the village is going to coordinate the work so to minimize the amount of streets that are only partially surfaced, as this has led to complaints in the past. The engineering department has submitted the floodplain management plan annual report for the CRS program. This allows Ridgewood to be classified as a Class 7 community. This means that residents in the floodplain areas can save 15% on their flood insurance premiums. The taxi RFP were due yesterday, and there were no responses. We will advertise again for proposals in the Ridgewood News next week. The building department wants to remind everyone that the spatial data logic permit and inspection portal is available for residents. You do have to register, and you can go in through the village website. You can check on your permits, you can check on the status of them, and so that's a great tool that can be used by our residents. I'd like to recognize 2 village employees who we've been told about who have gone above and beyond their daily responsibilities. The first one is David Scheibner in water. And I'd just like to read what the resident wrote. It says, on Saturday evening, I observed a water ban violator and called Central Dispatch to report. They said they would get to it, but the police were busy with an emergency. I texted Dave Scheibner, as I do during normal business hours. I guess they're very close, this resident and Dave. And despite it being after hours, he responded, and observed the violation in process. I just wanted you to be aware that he took the time to make the extra effort, and I appreciated it. The other one is Riley Felton, who is in our sanitation department. And let me read this one as well. As I was pulling into my driveway, the sanitation worker picking up my trash was rinsing out my garbage can with a hose. He said it looked like it needed to be cleaned, and he saw my hose and decided to do it. Talk about going above and beyond. I'm sure he won't see this, but I wanted to make a note of it. So she said, thank you again, Riley. So I just want to let you know, every day our residents are out there working for, our employees are out there working for the residents, and we have many that go above and beyond. And if any of you out there have stories like this, we'd love to hear them, because I think that it really shows that this is their town too, and they really care about it. I'd also like to thank PSC&G and their employees for their contribution to the volunteer installation of a playground at the Windsor Bergen Academy, which is the former Mount Carmel School, on Broad Street last week. There were 125 volunteers who donated their time. They built this playground for this special needs school. Now all the children will be able to use the swing sets, the slides, and the macadam play areas, and also the picnic tables. Community events, again, we want to remind you about every Sunday the farmers market is at the train station lot. And it's open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Great. Thank you, Heather. So we're going on to council reports, and we'll start with Councilman Voigt.
Thank you, Mayor Knutson. So last night, the Board of Trustees of the library met. A couple of things that came out of that. They've already put together a preliminary 2017 budget for the library, and it looks like it's going to be flat. In other words, then no increase from last year. The village appropriation for 2016 was $2.37 million, so it looks like it's going to be the same this year, just FYI. There were some concerns expressed by the trustees, and actually this is some of the, it's the Ridgewood Moms Facebook page. Wait.
I think it's Ridgewood Moms and Dads.
And Dads, okay, sorry. So there's been a concern that the steps going up the hill behind the Pease Library that go up to the street, they are in need of repair. I mean, they're actually in pretty bad disrepair. And so I think they're going to be meeting with Village Hall next week to kind of talk about what we need to do with that.
Next week.
Yeah, just FYI. The other thing that they want to present to us, and sometime in the next few months, is there's plans for the renovation of the library. I mentioned this before. That includes an interior space and the auditorium, with the intention of making the auditorium, I think, a performing arts center of some sort. And the anticipated costs for this are in the $5 million range. So they're looking for, I would assume, our help in bonding that amount of money. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. Nancy Green said at some point over the next few months that they would like to present to the village their concepts, which is a 3D rendering and some of the architectural drawings, but they're just a heads up on that. All right, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, last Thursday, the Community Center Advisory Board met, and it was decided that they would purchase blinds for the Annie Zusi Youth Center to put up on the windows, so when people are doing exercises in the mornings and everything, folks outside won't stop and just kind of like leer in. So it seemed to be a problem, and we addressed it down there. And then also there was a not-for-profit muralist who came in and looked at the space and was going to bring back some proposals about a mural to kind of paint on the walls down there and liven it up. So the guy was really high energy, and he was really, really excited about the room, which, from my understanding, is not many people get too excited about that room down there. Nobody. So it ought to be interesting to see what he brings back. And once I know, I'll let all you know. And that's my report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman Walsh.
I already talked about mine.
Good.
I'm good.
Councilman Hache.
So last night, we had the Parks and Recreation meeting. One of the issues that came up was the duck pond. There were concerns there. We're waiting for a response from the county parks director just to figure out what the remediation, the timing of it would be. As soon as I have any information, I'll keep everyone informed. As was the case in the Fields Committee meeting, there was a discussion about Maple Field, and they identified that there was a gash in midfield near where the emblem is, and that will be repaired in the first week of October. We wanted to make sure that that gets taken care of very quickly, because obviously that's a potential for someone's foot to get caught and cause an injury. We're also looking at what the cost would be for a protective berm to provide some protection from the field. The field, as I mentioned earlier, at the last meeting, is about 12 years old. Warranties for 8. When we looked at making the field a little bit softer, some concerns that it was very hard surface, and that was created, by the silt coming in from the flooding, and then as the water recedes, all that the solid particles remain and makes it feel very hard. When we look at making it softer, essentially, the field, what they do is they bring in these rubber pellets. And if you ever watch an NFL game, the hardness of their field is about half of what the limit normally is proposed. I mean, you see these guys running, you see that the pellets flying everywhere. The fibers are so worn in this field that in order for us to be able to bring it to a softer level, the field essentially would look black, because there's nothing to hold these things in place. So we're very concerned that it may not be able to withstand another major weather event. So regardless of what happens with the field, whether it's replacing or doing anything else, we need to look at a way to protect that investment, because it is an investment, and a berm could be a good way to do that. The field itself gets a lot of use. That field, and if you look at sort of the checklist that we look at for all the different facilities in town, it hits every single one. It's centrally located, so a lot of the older kids can ride their bicycles to the field. Something that we don't have on Shedler, for example, in terms of getting a number of kids to be able to ride their bikes. Ample parking. It's actually the second largest parking lot in town, I think, after Cottage Place. And it's also surrounded by village property on all sides, except on the Meadowbrook side. Obviously, it's just a street, but there's a lot of good buffer of trees all around it to protect the neighborhoods from the noise and from the lights that are on there until late. So we're going to be looking at that. I have to consult with DEP, obviously, with some of the concerns of building any berms around it. So, but moving forward, whatever the cost is to remediate or replace the field, we'd have to incorporate what the cost would be also in terms of protecting it from weather events. That was the discussion. Oh, and then the other thing that came up was Wi-Fi in our public parks. And that seemed to be sort of a prickly topic. But when you look at, Central Park has done it. It's 20 square miles, and they have 26 different hotspots. There's ways to do it. Some concerns are, for example, some of the parks in town that are only used temporarily for, they're seasonal. Difficult to get a contract from a provider because they don't really see it as being profitable. I know in Central Park, I think AT&T is the one that has the contract. So, these companies can look at it as a great way to capture more business. So I'm sure there's a way for us to be able to work with them and come up with a way. Think about being at Graydon Park, Graydon Pool, and being able to, as kids are swimming, be able to do some work or be connected. So we're looking at that as well.
Okay. Thank you. So I just have a couple of things. First, I want to point out that the planning board does meet here Tuesday evening, 7:30. We will continue our applications on multifamily housing. The Sunday evening was the 2016 Gold Star event at Van Ness. It was a beautiful tribute to Gold Star mothers and families. The American Legion Post Commander Bob Paoli did just a wonderful job, along with Maria Bombase and Blue Star Mothers, just to name a few. They organized a wonderful event, and Mark DeAngelis is a Ridgewood resident who's a Gold Star family member, who spoke so eloquently about the loss of his father when he was 4 years old during the Vietnam War. So we're really grateful to Mark and to all the Gold Star mothers and families. The Blue Star Mothers also placed a wreath at the Soldiers' Course and presented the village with a new Honor and Remember flag, which I dutifully turned over to Heather for safekeeping. It will be placed at Van Ness, hopefully within the next few days. And I thought the flag is so beautiful and has a lot of symbolism, and I just thought I'd share this little bit of information. So if you see this flag flying at Van Ness, you understand what everything on the flag means. So it's horizontally divided in 2/3 red over 1/3 white to represent bloodshed of our heroes. The gold star overlays a blue star in the center of the flag, representing the symbolism already used to distinguish families who have loved ones serving, the blue star, and those who have lost a loved one serving in the fight, the gold star. The white border surrounding the gold star recognizes the purity of their sacrifice. The folded flag rests in the base of the star, signifying the final tribute to an individual. In the center of the gold star is the eternal flame, a reminder of the spirit that has departed this life and yet burns on in the memory of all who knew and loved the fallen hero. Emblazoned across the base of the flag are the words honor and remember, which together with the folded flag, flame, and colored stars tell the story of personal loss. So it was really just a beautiful tribute, and we're grateful to the Blue Star Mothers for presenting us with a new flag to replace our tattered flag. On Monday, I had the opportunity, along with Councilman Hache and Deputy Mayor Seaton, to attend the Boy Scout Troop 5 Eagle Scout Court of Honor. Also joining us, I know he's waving, and I actually don't see out of my left eye that well, but I actually do see a hand moving. I actually have no vision in my left eye, but I do see this hand because he thinks I forgot him. But I did not forget Councilman Jeffrey Voigt, but I left him on the side because he did join us, but he also holds the distinction of becoming an Eagle Scout, and I hope I'm going to remember this, in 1974?
Correct.
Yes, that's being very
Good.
generous.
So
Thank you.
Mental note, it was 1974.
You know what's funny? He was behind me, and when they're saying, I guess there's like the standard, yeah, and I hear Jeff just kind of shouting it out. I'm like, I was looking for in the program. I'm like, where's he reading this? This is
Ramon, you never forget. Okay. That was drilled into my head.
So I didn't forget you. I just wanted to point out that you two are an Eagle Scout as of 1974. So the Court of Honor recognized John Stephen Capurso and Ryan Truesdell Bimba, both completing all requirements and becoming Eagle Scouts. So congratulations to both of them. And finally, in my report, as we move on into the cooler fall weather, the leaves and the winter ahead, I'd like to remind everyone of the unique opportunity in the Ridgewood Fire Department affords our residents through the Adopt a Hydrant program. As the self-proclaimed council spokesperson and a longtime participant in the Adopt a Hydrant program, I urge residents, especially those living close to fire hydrants, to sign on. Participants in the program help ensure firefighters have immediate access to fire hydrants that may be blocked by leaf piles, overgrowth, snow, ice, and other obstructions. Anyone interested could email me or visit the Ridgewood Fire Department website at rfd.ridgewoodnj.net. And it's really cool because a representative of the fire department comes to your home and officially presents you with an Adopt a Hydrant certificate with your name emblazoned on it, and it's your obligation to maintain that fire hydrant and its surroundings. So even though it's kind of fun and it sounds like cute and everything, it really is a great service to our community because it really does allow access, and in the event of an emergency, the last thing we want to do is be in a situation where there's any obstruction to our fire hydrants and putting anyone in danger. So please sign on, and we really would appreciate that. And I believe with that, we move on to public comments. No? Oh, come on up.
Hello. Yes. My name is Michael Velikue, 250 Hope Street residence, 23 North Road business. Two hats. First of all, in behalf of all the potential victims of the PSG&G Big Dig, we want to thank you very much for your great success. It's going to make a difference, no question about it. My comments are strictly regarding to the parking, CBD parking. I noticed that all the information comes from a report, Walker's report, I guess, yes? Even this report seems to be very, has a lot of data in it. I think it's rather, it doesn't really reflect, in my opinion, the life of the town. It's rather generic. Just for your better understanding, I want to describe the town very briefly. There are 3 chapters in the parking challenge. And they are dictated by what I call the daytime Ridgewood, the evening Ridgewood, and the Ridgewood in steroids. The daytime is, and by the way, it's very clear, determined geographically by the park, east and west of the park, and 6 o'clock is the time point where everything seems to change. The east part, which is roughly businesses and not so many restaurants, it seems to be, so that area seems to be in greater demand until 6 o'clock. After 6 o'clock, it just flips into the west side of that delimitation, and at that point there are mainly restaurants that dictate the demand, and that is an important, in my opinion, an important information in order to make the right decision on how to address it. Well, going back to the third one, the parking on steroids is actually Saturday evening, and I'm sorry, weekends evening. I'm going to help you with a couple of numbers. There are 60 restaurants in town. I will say average, it's 60 seats per restaurant. That means 3,600 seats. The rule of thumb is 40% in order to find out the number of cars to satisfy that. 40% of 3,600 is 1,440 cars. 75% of those cars are in what you call the red area. That means 1,100 cars. This is guessed. Now, if we want to go back and look a little deeper, you'll understand that the 60 restaurants have roughly 6 cars per restaurant and 8 during the weekend. That means 300 cars daily and 480 cars in weekends. This is employees' cars I'm talking about. Now, in addition of that, obviously, it's the professionals. I remember in a chamber, we used to have about 200 or 250 professionals. Even if they need 2 cars pair, that's going to end up to the 500. What I'm trying to say in here is this. I think the most important target is to create the place for the employers. I think that if you look at these numbers, you'll understand that that should be number one in our effort to find solutions. Repeat parking. I'm not trying to be funny in here, but repeat parking, it's not necessarily working because everybody that intends to stay more than 3 hours and work in town, he will have a piece of rag and a bottle of Windex in the car in order to take care of the chalk. I mean, this is reality, unfortunately. It's supposed to be something a little bit more creative at this point. In my business, Mediterranean Restaurant, on my job description, I have it very clear. For productivity reasons, I don't allow anybody to park on the street. And I explain it very clear. I don't want you every 3 hours to stop cooking or stop serving people and go wandering the streets looking for parking. Well, obviously the question is, where you want me to park? Unfortunately, right now, I say, find something else. So that's, again, that's the area we have to work with. I really have a very strong feeling that if that will be...
That timer is, your time is up. But.
Okay. One more thing, please. I think we need to be a little bit more, when we look for solutions, I think we should be a little bit more creative, out of the box, new ideas. I like the sign. I think the sign should have an app attached to it. People use apps to find parking. And then I will just one more idea. For example, if
we have other people, I'm sorry. You know what?
One sentence.
One more sentence. That's
one sentence. There are every two spots. It's a square.
Yeah, we know. That's the suburban.
It's 100. I count them. There are 120 of them. They're about half of the spot. If you get rid of them, there will be 50 spots. Okay. That's a little bit of an out-of-the-box idea.
Okay,
thank you very much for your time.
Michael, could you send me your information that you talked about with the data, the number of cars per restaurant and all that kind of stuff? Could you provide that to me?
I'll be more than glad to provide everything,
and
hopefully we'll be able to work on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Cynthia Hallaby, 374 Evergreen Place. I would like to just mention a few things about the art display policy that you're going to put in place. And I would urge you to differentiate between art display and historic display. In this building, you have got some very interesting historic items, namely on the ground floor, those wonderful photographs. And then recently, this Red Cross display. This display honors the veterans, it honors the volunteers, it honors Ridgewood, the Red Cross presence in Ridgewood for 100 years. So these, I think, should be differentiated from the wonderful artwork that is placed on the walls.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and I don't think I think we are separating that out.
No, I didn't hear that in yours, so that's
you're
why.
Absolutely
I did
right.
not hear that comment,
okay.
So that's why I was
great
proposing
point.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Noemi. I don't know if I have to mention that, 336 Cedar Avenue. But my comment was basically just to introduce an alternative initiative to parking because I've been working on a grant proposal for more bike racks. I know that biking is something that is very encouraged in Ridgewood. However, there's not a lot of people that bike because as someone that bikes, I've realized that there's only one bike rack place, and it's at the top of East Ridgewood Avenue where the train racks are. So I would like to introduce that. I know that I sent Councilwoman Walsh a funding proposal. It's 9 pages. It's not that long. And I have some actually like spots where it would be ideal to put the bike racks. And I think that it's a great initiative as a lot of people should be more encouraged to bike all around town because it's a very healthy way to use transportation. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, Rourke, Holiday 374 Evergreen. Ms. Walsh, when is the next meeting of the pedestrian safety?
It is next Thursday.
Okay, because I'd like to come.
Absolutely.
Now, in response to the mayor, I never hinted about collusion. That's an unfair comment of yours. Now, you're a very clever woman, I'm a very clever man. Red herrings like this don't work with me. I was very honest, I was very open about the need for transparency. Maybe my comments were opaque, but the point I'm trying to make is transparency. I know if one of the three amigos had won $25,000 from a church attended by one of the developers, my friends the Vocalantes, otherwise known as the Knutson Choir, would have been up in arms. What I'm trying to say is...
I'm going to have to call a point of order.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is...
You can't make comments about any specific person on
Now,
the
this
dais.
is one thing, but I'm addressing her question now. As far as the discussion about the parking, I scratch my head. I'm a consultant. I help people solve problems. And I wasn't sure whether to describe the discussion as rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, or whether I was listening to some discussion at the Moscow Central Planning, Economic Planning District. I mean, that's such a pathetic, complicated. I know you mean well. The question is, we need parking. We need a garage. Now, Mr. Voigt, time after time after time, you kept on saying you need to raise that. Now, I realize Ms. Knutson vetoes that. You've got to do something about a parking garage. We need it. Purple badges, first come, first served, 75 cents, 50 cents. It's so complicated. You're going to drive the people nuts. And basically, we're short of parking spaces. We need a garage. Thank you.
Before you talk, Tony, can I just make just a general reminder to everybody that when you come up to make a public comment, it's supposed to be to everyone on the dais. It's not supposed to, unless it's maybe something that's specific to a question that a council person asked you or you exchanged emails or something to that effect, but you're not really supposed to make a comment, or positive or negative, to any specific person on the dais. And that's part of Robert's Rules of Order, which we follow. So.
Tony Damiano, 274 South Broad Street. I guess I opened the evening and I'm closing it. Just a couple thoughts, comments. Mondays you can always find a spot, and the reason is the recession is still here, and it has affected the town. Many businesses choose to stay closed on a Monday to save on payroll, lighting, etc. A lot of restaurants in general are closed on Monday. I refuse to do that. I do abbreviated hours. That works for me. The thought about 25 cents at Cottage Place, I think, is brilliant. I think that will fill Cottage Place immediately. 75 cents on the street, questionable. If there's a reason for it, like if it needs to fund the garage, I can see it. I just don't know if the timing is right because we are still very volatile. I understand the thought process, and I could be wrong. We'd have to put it out to the community, but I think that one might create a backlash. That's just some thought. We didn't mention the Ken Smith lot tonight, and my understanding is the village is not in control of that lot any longer.
Correct.
It's back to the landlord. There are permits available, but they're $100, I
That's
believe
right,
now.
yes. It's through the landlord, and they are $100 a month.
Okay. And is that just for employees?
That's, yes, employee parking. They may be renting it to other people, but if employees want to park there, they have to go through that landlord.
Okay. Do we know if it's being utilized at all?
At one point, they were also renting to Whole Foods. I don't know if they still are, and I don't know if they're renting to commuters or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Good evening.
Hello. Lorraine Reynolds, 550 Windermere. I kind of just have a question. I'm not sure whether I understood what you guys decided with the parking for each particular lot, because at one point you were saying, you could buy for the purple, but then still park at Chestnut or the others. Did you guys decide that you're going to sell a parking permit, a commuter pass, whatever you want to call it, for a particular lot? Yes.
I believe that that's
Yeah.
what we're
Okay,
doing, yes.
and you guys will decide, like, how many, Hudson will be X amount of
Right.
spots? Okay. So then at another point, I know Councilman Voigt's thing that I have here said like 20 spots should be reserved on Hudson for shoppers, but I think Councilman Hache said 20 should be for commuters. Did I misunderstand that?
So the 20 for commuters was at Chestnut lot. So Chestnut is only 65 spots.
Okay, so you're thinking 20,
Allocate 20 to commuters,
oh, and then the other 45 for shoppers?
right, or.
Okay, but at Hudson, currently, there's 76 spaces. 61 are for commuters, so that leaves 15 spots. We know the 15 spots is not enough. So if you only go to 20, it's still not enough. So I think you should have a lot more than 20 reserved for shoppers and diners on the Hudson Street lot. So, thank you.
So actually, I think this is, sorry, Lorraine, I think this is like one of these conversations that, I don't know if whoever, Councilman Hache, Councilman Boyd, if y'all are going to get together and have a conversation, maybe reaching out to Lorraine and some of your CBDAC people.
Looks like we'll be meeting next
however
Thursday.
we're saying it. And
Right, but the council is meeting next Wednesday, and that's
Right,
when you're going to firm everything up,
Right.
so.
maybe you could just have some kind of dialogue and get some input, because it's nothing's written in stone. It's not written in stone until it's adopted, and then even then, it's not necessarily written in stone. So, they're going to refine, and October 5th, we'll have it in front of us, and we can refine from there, and then be ready for October 12th. So any input
Okay.
is welcome.
Thanks.
But just keep in mind that once you decide, we have to move forward because we have to order permits
Oh, I meant
and everything
it is
else.
written in stone once we do that, but I
Okay.
meant we could always revisit it 6 months, a year from now. I
yeah,
meant
you
that
could, you
necessarily
could.
isn't, not that we want to.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I'd like to say I think the parking ideas that you guys discussed this evening are amazing. I thought the discussion was wonderful. I can't believe certain things like that there might be able to be 40 spots at Hudson by simply paving it and relining it. I really appreciate the work that the five of you have put into it, and that Councilman Voigt typed up for all of us to see. It's great. Just in general, the camaraderie on the dais continues to be just wonderful. I think some people are so shell-shocked that it's just, we're not quite used to the fact that it's all pleasant all the time. I found it quite interesting that the Village Garage is now going to be earning money for us. Seems to me there was a former council person that wanted nothing more than to just get rid of the Village Garage, get rid of the Village Garage. Now we're going to be making money off it. I think that's great. And the last thing I wanted to mention is in reference to the Maple Field. I had sent an email to Tim Cronin, and I had CC'd Councilman Hache a while ago. There's a lack of bathroom facilities over there. I recall that when the bathrooms were put in at the Leicester Stable, there was much discussion that they were going to have this outside entrance so that people could use them. Well, I was there on a recent Saturday, and you could not get in to the Leicester Stable. They were locked. And there was one porta potty in the parking lot by Maple, which was grossly contaminated, and I realized that could happen with a single use. But there was no toilet paper, and this was at about 9 or 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, so you'd think that the contractor that manages it would have at least, installed new toilet paper. I saw 5 people relieving themselves in the one in the stream and 4 kids, they had to go. And one child was crying because his mother was trying to make him go in the porta potty. His mother wouldn't let him go in the porta potty, and she was holding up a sheet for him, or a towel, for him to urinate behind, and he was so embarrassed, I guess maybe one of his friends was going to see him. So I wrote to Tim Cronin, who said that there's something about a brain by the bathroom door that hasn't been, I didn't quite get it. something that maybe is going to electronically let those doors be open at the right times, but I do hope that at least in the short term, if they can't get those expensive bathrooms available, that they could put up more porta potties for people. Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Jacqueline Home, 30 Carriage Lane. I just wanted to follow up. First of all, thank you for another highly productive meeting. I'm really feeling that they just keep happening, and I'm very, very happy and hopeful. Thanks for a good job in working together, all 5 of you. And the administration and the other staff is also working, seems to be working together. I just want to bring up again the Shedler. I wrote again trying to follow up on that. I still haven't received an answer to that complaint. I understand that it's still being looked at and in the process. However, I wrote an email after last meeting saying that there are still several related factors that need to be addressed. I think Deputy Mayor Seaton pointed out the RBSA donation was received and didn't go through the gift process, and it was done incorrectly, and it was put in a safe and then was given back. There's an issue with that. There's also an issue with there were artifacts dating back to the Revolutionary War that were found on the parcel. Now, I know that there's a grant for the historical application of the house, but the parcel itself is being, I'm not going to say ignored, but it hasn't been addressed. If the house is historical, common sense, the land was there before the house. So, and it's been shown that there were artifacts dating back to the Revolutionary War, so that's another missing piece that needs to be addressed there. Phase 1 was was already approved, Phase 1 grant application. But that was for cleanup, and I understand that the village owns the property, and why they can't go in there and pick up twigs or garbage and things that were listed on Phase 1. Why are we using grant application money for that when we have staff that's employed already getting paid to do this? If we could use that money to repair perhaps the house that needs the roof, or put it aside, and the same way we did for Van Ness, go back and ask them for a change to that use of the grant application. And that brings me to my next point, which is, what I said earlier as far as the enforcement of the Ridgewood nursery and the 2 parcels that a complaint had been filed years ago, and all of a sudden there's no enforcement. What is happening to the staff at the Village of Ridgewood? Roberta's departure addressed just a tiny bit of my complaint, but there remains a whole crew of staff members that partook in that entire application process, not only for Shedler, but for Habernickel, and like the Ridgewood Nursery, they have not been enforcing or doing things that were already in place. So what can be done when it comes to employees? I've been saying all along that the application process had to be looked into, but I've also said that it wasn't just Roberta. Somebody said it earlier, we can't just keep blaming Roberta, which I wholeheartedly agree with. She was one of an entire team that took hand in this. The engineer was the one who came up with the site plans, knowing that there was a historical element to both the parcel and the house. So I would still like that opportunity to sit down once all that information is given, but I also think that it needs, and I've said this before, that this needs to be extended to not just a Roberta issue, because I don't believe that's what it was. I think a lot of people had a hand in this, continue to have a hand in this, and they need to also be investigated, and that needs to be corrected as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. With respect to the comments about the free Wi-Fi in the park, I must disagree with Councilman Hache just about Graydon. Graydon would be the one place that I would say that there should not be Wi-Fi, because I have observed in several instances people who are sitting, particularly in the kiddie pool area, who are not watching their children, but they are on their smartphones or tablets looking down, and their children are off someplace where they shouldn't be, and then they stick their head up, and all of a sudden they're looking around and they can't find their children. So anything that we could do to avoid putting Wi-Fi in Graydon might be good, and it might be prevent some accidents from happening there. With respect to parking, since parking is going to come up again, I think you said on October 5th, I know the subject of kiosks has been talked about several times in terms of getting rid of the meters in town, in the village, and putting kiosks in their place. As you know, we go back and forth to Hoboken quite a bit with our grandchildren. Hoboken dispensed with all their parking meters and has kiosks in. Just something to think about, whether you want to do that or not. There was mention about changing the parking rate and how all the meters have to be changed. If there are only a small amount of kiosks in comparison to the number of meters that you have in town, it might be a lot easier of a process whenever you change. The other thing that the kiosks prevent is that they prevent people from coming in and, you know, you put enough money in for an hour and you stay only 10 minutes and somebody else comes in and uses that money. If you have the kiosk in place, of course, it means that people have to get their own ticket and you make more money. So it might be something that you would want to think about along with all the other things that you're thinking about with respect to parking. I will say I find it quite interesting that somebody has the audacity to come to the microphone and accuse the mayor of having an agenda when it seems that that person's only agenda is to attack the mayor. So that perplexes me. Every time that happens, I feel as though I have to say something about it, so I'll say something about it again. And I just don't understand that. And I know that individual does have a Facebook account because I've seen him post on Facebook, and I did see notice of the mayor's sons posted on Facebook on the Ridgewood Police Department's Facebook page. Their appointment was posted there, and there was also an article about them in the Daily Voice that was also mentioned there. So again, I find it quite interesting that the individual has made an accusation that that was kept under wraps, when in fact it was not kept under wraps. I'm disappointed in, although I always like the First Amendment, I'm disappointed that we've got this case now in Hoboken going on that people are allowed to come to the microphone and say anything they want because of the First Amendment. And maybe we should change that, but I guess we can't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay, just before we take our resolution to go into closed session, I just wanted to say one thing. So just about 3 months ago, I guess it'll be a couple of days, 3 months ago, we were sworn in this new council. And I really just wanted to say thank you to all my council colleagues. It has been a spirited discussion, but it's a polite, cordial, professional discussion. And it's been really a tremendous 3 months, and I'm hoping we're going to continue moving forward at this pace and this clip. So thank you. And with that, we'll take a resolution to go into closed.
Okay. Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on September 28th, 2016 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the caucus room on the 4th floor of Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters in RCRD litigation, town garage property, review of Faulkner Act, personnel matters to include appointments to boards, committees, human resources, police department, parks and recreation. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec. Be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. Motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nope.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.